All right, we're gonna start the meeting, so you can join us in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilperson Vargas Mendez.
Here.
Councilperson Lamb.
Here.
Elijah Whiteburn.
Here.
Councilperson Foster. Councilperson Graham. President.
I'm here.
She's here.
Here.
She's right in the middle of my screen.
Top left.
Oh,
I am COVID positive, so I can't be there in person.
well, you stay right home.
And I know Christina is gonna try to join if she can get a Wi-Fi. She's at.
Get well soon, spring.
So first up would be to approve the meeting minutes for March 14th and March 21st.
I'll move.
Second.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Spring.
Yes,
Right.
I just want to say, did you all get the tax reconciliation that I sent you?
yes.
Okay, I didn't bring one with me. I sent along last year's reconciliation just for comparison. In case you wonder how it looks compared to normal. There are a few more properties that in the past that are still unpaid. But probably percentage wise, it's about the same income that because of divisions.
Yeah, the totals were still up.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That slipped by me earlier.
See what's up. Quite a lot. Yeah. Right, so next up, so we have our annual presentation. From like it's Berkshire Hathaway now, so. Yep, and it'd be Don Hauser and his team. To go over the. So I guess, did you have slides? or
Yeah.
anything?
So I'll be doing that.
Yeah, we're glad that this hasn't been too big of a burden for you, you know, we remember,
It's just a great drive.
yeah,
And
That's beautiful.
spend a
Yeah.
couple days in the area, so.
yeah, but it was important to us to put this in that permit. That
I agree.
require you to be here, but you
good
know,
call.
you're not resisting, which is great. It's great to have you come and report to the community and answer your questions.
Would you like me to sit or can I
Yeah,
stand?
you can either, whatever you want to.
Thanks. Thank you Supervisor, members of the town board for having me once again to discuss the prior year, 2023 activities and what has happened at our Borger station here in the community. And as you know, as Councilman Lamb just said, this is a requirement for us to be here. Not much of a requirement, enjoy it, but it's in the special use permit as a condition for us to be here every April and discuss these matters. So really appreciate being here. I think this is our third year now of going over the information and happy to be here. So thanks for having me. I'll begin with the deck. You have it on your screen. Hopefully everybody at home can see it as well. We can go to page 2. Page 2, the standard deck that we have, photo of the facility. Who we are, that's what we want to discuss right off the top. Who we are at BHE GT&S of Berkshire Hathaway Energy Company. Well, first off is our core principles of which we operate every day. And this is internally how we operate and how we employees go about the business of working at BHE GT&S and Berkshire Hathaway Energy. Our core principles: customer service, employee commitment, environmental respect, financial strength, operational excellence, and regulatory integrity. And as we go along in this presentation, you may see some of those icons on certain slides. So if you have the slide deck, you know, later on, or it's posted somewhere, you can refer back to what is that symbol again? And refer back to this page 4 that shows you exactly what that core principle or core value is that we operate under. The next slide shows a map of what is Berkshire Hathaway Energy. So from the California coast to where we are, here on your screen, this is BHE-GTNS. And everything else is companies of Berkshire Hathaway Energy. And some little facts that I pulled out of this year's annual report, the 2023 annual report, just to highlight those core principles that we saw on this previous slide of some interesting points about the company as a whole. Bring you down to near the bottom, almost $138 billion in total assets of Berkshire Hathaway Energy. From Pacific Core out west, the whole way across the United States to BHE-GTNS. And it's a very large company. I think if we were publicly traded, it'd probably be the #2 utility in the United States. That's how big Berkshire Hathaway Energy is in size. I'm gonna go through this again later on and highlight it, but environmental excellence, you'll see the third point down. The pipeline group, which is made of 3 companies in Berkshire Hathaway Energy, has a methane intensity rate of 0.027. I think that's important to see. If you've ever looked up methane intensity in our industry, you'll know that we are an industry leader in methane intensity rate. And that's something we're proud of, and that's something that we strive to better every year. So we'll go to the next slide and talk about BHE Pipeline Group, which is what we are a part of BHE-GTNS inside the Berkshire Hathaway Energy Group. That's 3 pipelines that you can see there, Kern River and BHE-GTNS is over here. And Northern National right in the center, Kern River out west. And so those blue pipes at the top is specific to Eastern Gas Transmission and Storage. That's the operating company that operates Borger Station. Down below with BHE-GTNS is green. That's Carolina Gas Transmission, all within BHE-GTNS. Okay, that's the pipeline group. Next slide is a map of our system. And the blue dots are LNG facilities. So that's where we make liquefied natural gas. The one in the eastern shore of Maryland there you can see is Cove Point. And that exports LNG, and the customers there are Japan and India. Sumitomo in Japan and Gale in India. That gas is produced in the United States, goes by pipeline to Cove Point. We liquefy it and send it to the customers. However, I do want to say that with all the geopolitical happenings in Europe over the last 2 years, a lot of cargo has gone to Europe. So those companies up in Europe have bought those cargoes from our customers and shipped them up to Europe as a way to supplant what was coming or is coming in from Russia into the European customers. And there we are, as a whole, have EGTS, not BHE-GTNS, but EGTS, who is the operator of Borger Station. So it's 2 different operating pipeline companies within BHE-GTNS. We'll go to the next slide. Can we skip way forward before we do these? How much natural gas? That's always an important question. How much gas is flowing through the station and how much gas is flowing through here in our community through Borger Station? You can see that right there. And Councilman Lamb, to your question last year, and I will give these to you because I have a separate copy. You wanted to see what they are in actual numbers, not just the graphs themselves. I tried my best through Excel to put that there as a clickable thing. It's clickable on Publisher, but it's not clickable when you turn it into a PDF to to highlight the following. So you can see in 2023, we pushed and pumped a lot more gas through this pipeline into New York State than 2022 and 2021. What does that tell you? Demand is not decreasing for natural gas, it's increasing. Is it weather related? Certainly. Is it more use for customers because of weather? We had a very cold winter in 2023. It set records within our system of daily output and throughput through our system. And it continued on. We had a cold spring last year. People were still using their furnaces, and that weather has continued into 2023 that we saw in 2022, and it is continuing into 2024 as well. And I'll highlight that in a later slide. So that's how much gas. And I think if we go back to the emissions data, then you won't be surprised when you see an uptick in, we're going to go ahead. Oh, a review of that. We've replaced the engines 2 and 3 with 4 and 5. You're all aware of that project. And that's the highlights of the project that was done in the town a couple years ago. Next slide is NOx. And you can see going there forward, and Councilman Lamb, you have that sheet that shows the actual data numbers. It's a slight uptick in NOx just because the volume of gas had increased significantly in 2023 as opposed to in comparison to 2022. Not anywhere near our potential to emit. As you can see, not even close to the potential to emit for the new engines, but slightly more than the year before. And we'll go to the next slide, which I think is SOx. Same thing. You'll see in the middle, that's the potential to emit if those engines were running 24/7 all year long, 24 hours a day, all year long. That's the potential to emit. And you can see that the turbines ran a little bit more. We discussed that, and so that's a slight uptick in SOx that you see there. We'll go to the next slide. CO, relatively the same. That's the controls that are on the engines too, as well, that knock that down. We'll go to the next one. Particulate matter. Just a slight uptick, but nowhere near the PTE, the potential emit. And I think I don't know if the community around it has just VOCs, or you measure particulate matter as well? Or
Yes.
Okay.
4 monitors for particular matter.
Okay.
And 1 with VOC.
So you might be able to corroborate
Oh, yeah.
that data. Okay, next slide. Formaldehyde, again, that's low. Next slide. VOCs, slight uptick from the year before, the year prior of 2022. And a little bit higher than 2021, when my first year coming through the council here with data. CO2 went up a little bit, but again, not close to the potential to emit for what could be emissions out of the stack if that facility is running 24 hours a day with all engines running at 100%. Methane, and again, I talked about that intensity rate for the BHE pipeline group. BHE GT&S is lower than our pipeline group number for our intensity rate for methane of 0.021%. And that's one of the best you're going to see in the industry. We're very proud of how we handle the gas, that we don't lose the gas, and we hope to improve that number every year.
Is that what intensity rate means? The amount that's lost?
It's how much, it's a percentage of how much gas would be lost to atmosphere of the total gas that you're using in your operations. So you could imagine that maybe a producer has a higher intensity rate than a pipeline company, but in the pipeline companies, that's one of the best you see in our segment.
What's your overall number again?
On
Your intensity rate that you,
our BHE GT&S, that's including EGTS and Carolina
Yeah.
Gas, is 0.021%. this this is a slide, again, very important to the community that we have this in here as well, not just the CO2 and the methane, but the equivalents as well. And an important slide, but again, you'll see we're not creeping up to the PTE on that. That's and again, slightly higher because we moved a lot more gas last year in 2023 than 2022, and of course, comparing to 2021. So
Would you say that's about 20% increase overall in the gas? It looks like that, just looking at this chart.
yeah, it's 33 million MCF, right? 33 million more than 2022, which is 2022 is 134 mil. 2023 is 167 million. So, yeah, I think your figures are about right.
Around 20.
What's it? Capacity. In other words, could it be? Hold on.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. HAPS, hazardous air pollutants on this one. See, we're just a little bit higher than last year. And you know, this is all new equipment with new controls. We can see in comparison for the project comparison, 2021 versus what is coming out of the station right now with the new equipment. I think that's a very important distinction on this slide is these are the things that you breathe. This is what the neighbors in the community would breathe if they're walking by the station or spending an enormous time in the station. This is important not only to the community, but to our employees as well. This is a very important slide to see that we have put in the best equipment there and modified engine 3 to really bring down HAPS. And that we're proud of this slide and what it shows. Okay, we discussed this at the top. Again, for review, there's your, we can go back just one. There is the amount of gas that's gone through the station. And next slide. Core principles, we talked about that. Environmental respect. You can see we're talking about that methane emissions rate. This is what I was talking about of winter, right? Now, this is a current. These are current. This is January, February of 2024. And there's some information there about 2023. 2023, we had a record of 7.9 BCF in February of 2023 that moved through our system. A record day. We beat that this year in 2024. Of 8.3 BCF moving through the system on January 20th. Cold days, cold weather, more gas flows, right? People are using furnaces, the industrial customers are using it, hospitals, nursing homes, elementary schools, high schools. Everybody's using gas to warm you up, you know, at 8 a.m. when everybody expects to go to work or be awake. So high peak day on January 20th of this year that beat the prior record of last year. So last year we had more gas flowing through than the year before. This year, I don't know what the weather entails for the rest of the year, but you know, if we're showing more gas through the line, and when I come back and see you next year, you know that we've had a winter where people are the weather is controlling demand from our customers. Excuse me, from our customers.
So that's the measuring the gas going upstream, up north, not down toward.
That is all through our system of BHE GTS, including Carolina Gas, including here in this line that goes through Borger up to the Capo area.
But also to the liquefied station down in Baltimore.
Code Point,
Yeah.
that's had some outstanding.
That's,
bids as
but
well.
that's some of this too.
On the third bullet down under other achievements, you see a production record.
Yeah.
On February 16th, or February 15th. and 16th. So Dan, Going deeper into your question, that first bullet, BHE GTNS system production is up more than 10% from the previous year. That is coming from 24, looking back to 23, but 23, we had a lot of gas moving through the system. So that's a bit of a look behind comparison. It gives you a window of supply and demand and how it's working for us to serve our customers with our pipeline network. And that will show you if the pattern holds and weather patterns hold. I'll be back next year, possibly talking about more throughput through the lines than this year. Quite possible. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is we're super proud about this with our pipeline group in particular. Mastio does a customer questionnaire about customer satisfaction with your pipeline suppliers. If you're a customer of our pipeline or any other pipeline, surveys go out and they want to hear from you on the performance of your supplier. And through the BHE pipeline group, we finished 1, 2, 3, and 4 across the nation in customer satisfaction. And it's a little tricky there because I said there were 3 companies in the pipeline group, but for Mastio, Carolina Gas Transmission is considered separate, and EGTS is considered separate, even though we are BHE GTNS. So we finished 1, 2, 3, and 4, and taking a deeper dive into the categories of either mega or small. You can see that you know, the 4 pipeline groups of BHE GTNS are award winners in customer satisfaction. So we do our job. We do it safely. We knock down emissions. We have a great methane intensity rate, and our customers believe in what we do and are happy with what we do at the same time. So great things internally for us to be proud of across the whole BHE company.
When you say customers, are you referring to distributors or residential?
LDCs, local distribution companies
Yeah,
are customers, industrials are customers.
But not residential.
No,
Okay.
no, since they're served by the LDCs that
Right.
we provide. And back to employee commitment and philanthropy, you have a couple paragraphs in here. I'm sorry it's so long, but I look back to 2023. Thank you for involving us in your rail trail project. Wonderful project for us to be involved in. Glad we were able to help. And please, if there's anything more, and I always end my presentations with philanthropy. So if there are any nonprofits or other organizations that you're familiar with, that you're involved in, and they're looking for funding, please, BHEGTNS.com, who we are, community engagement, and there's the application process. And with that, any questions?
You give to volunteer fire departments?
Yes.
Not sure Mason heard that.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was it, sorry?
They have a grant program that,
Oh, yes, that's over here to chat.
okay.
Yeah.
Did you meet Mason?
No.
He's
Oh, that how-
yeah, I wanted him here because he represents the fire department that's nearest to your facility.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Any questions? Happy to stand for questions, council.
Yeah, just a quick one. So you mentioned BHE intensity being at a, I guess, an industry low compared to other.
In pipelines,
Yeah, I did a quick little search and it looks like you're in a pretty enviable position there. But what's your target? Do you set a goal and how close are you to that overall goal for?
Well, our goal is improvement every year. So, you know, if we can lower that number and maintain our position every year, that's just wonderful. I mean, that's really a rate to be proud of if you look at the whole entire industry. So that's one thing to keep in mind is when you think about a company or a pipeline company, the gas that's in the pipe is not our gas. Doesn't belong to us. It's customer gas and we're responsible for it. And we're responsible for delivering every molecule of gas that's purchased by the customers that rides our system to where that endpoint needs to be. And if we lose it, we have to buy it. So it's important for us to keep that gas in the pipe and not have leaks. So we've done a lot of things. So when we have a pipeline cut that we have to replace a section of pipe, and we've talked about this before. Now we bring in a unit that will capture all that gas that's there. After we take up down the entire pressure of the pipe, we're able to do a cut. Then we bring a piece of equipment in that captures the remaining gas that would have years prior just vented into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Now we capture that. At the station, with the equipment and the new engines and the modifications to engine 3 that we did with the last project, we have pressurized hold now. So after we turn the engines off, gas used to be admitted up through the pipe and what would be a blowdown. That gas would go out through the blowdown tube, and that would be considered a blowdown. Now we have pressurized hold at Voyager Station. When we turn off the engines, that gas is not evacuated to atmosphere. It's held inside in the station piping and not evacuated to atmosphere. That's you can see with the slide deck, the amount of improvements, and I think I'm approaching your concern that we talked about earlier with the pressurized hold. So that's another thing that we do to keep that gas in our system, not vented to atmosphere, which would make that intensity rate much higher.
Another question. So it looks like your NOx and your SOx and your carbon monoxide HAPs do not, I mean, they've gone up, but they don't track the volume increase. So they didn't go up 20%, which is a good thing. It looks like, proportionally, they scrub better, even though more volume goes through.
Right.
However, the methane did go up significantly. Why didn't those two track? I mean, some of the
exactly
other
right.
criteria pollutants you controlled very well, considering more gas was going through, but methane, not so much.
That is, we've discussed it. That's the trade-off, really. We built this facility to knock down significantly HAPs and VOCs and criteria pollutants that directly affect the health of the community that lives around the station and our employees that work there. So you have the solo NOx. We've talked about that in the past. The solo NOx equipment that's on each and every engine out there that wasn't on engines 1, 2, and 3 when they were in service. And that knocks down NOx, SOx. And so it's a trade-off when you're burning that much gas and you're using all this equipment at a very high pressure, high volume, and you're doing all you can to knock down criteria pollutants. That burn is going to cause CO2 and methane to be burned at a higher rate. And that's the trade-off that we've discussed in the past, that of having that equipment in there that really takes care of criteria pollutants that affect public health. I'm talking too fast.
Yeah.
And you have a trade-off of a touch higher CO2 E.
So to reduce the more dangerous, the more health threatening emissions, you have to sacrifice more of the greenhouse gas emissions.
That's absolutely correct. But it's not to a rate, as you see there, that
The prior standards
that is.
where you were
I
previous.
don't think anybody would think that's dangerous level of CO2 and methane that's coming out of the system and going to atmosphere.
Yeah.
But very well said in your question. It's a direct result of what we did to improve the quality of life and public health around the station.
Which is why we approved this project, frankly, because the reduction in the most harmful pollutants to the neighborhood. Yeah, so there's just I mean, we got to recognize that the demand for natural gas is going up. We don't like that. But those are our residents and other people upstream that are turning to natural gas more than other forms of energy. We're not isolated in that regard, but it's
weather.
something we'd like to see
Yeah.
change, but you're not, that's not your job. Change consumer behavior.
Now we service our customers and we're scoring high marks from them and doing what we can to be a great partner environmentally as well, to deliver a product at the best the best way we can and the best way for the environment.
But I mean, company-wide, it's the renewable. The part of the portion of renewables going up that you offer.
Yes, through the whole company wide,
Yeah.
we have BHE Renewables. We just did a huge project in West Virginia with BHE Renewables of microturbines. And really, it just couldn't be a better project. That was some enacting legislation by the General Assembly there, and the governor got behind it. And that is a great project of microturbines in West Virginia. And yeah, wind, solar is all part of the portfolio of BHE Renewables. As is renewable natural gas. Or biogas, if you're aware that in New York State certainly has a market for it, and there are family farms that connect and cap their methane at the farm and put that renewable natural gas into the distribution system here in New York State. Our system is accepting renewable natural gas as well, which is carbon negative.
Yeah.
If you believe that, or you can understand, it's not believe it, but it's true, it's carbon negative. If that methane were going to atmosphere, right? Think about the methane from a manure pit going to atmosphere. We capture that, put it in the pipeline, and now it's carbon negative. So it's if you can promote RNG in the community, it's a great thing, and there's customers for it, and we accept it into our pipeline as well.
Is anything coming from, is it Seneca Meadows?
They do methane capture.
They do methane,
Like-
do you take,
Landfills,
We don't have any
Landfills.
customers of RNG in New York State yet,
Oh.
but we do in other parts of our system.
are we doing that anywhere in Dryden, methane capture?
I don't think so. There's some in central New York, but I don't think.
Yeah, I
any
know
in
they're doing
Dryden.
it. There's some in Tioga County, but I wasn't aware of any methane capture
yeah,
with our dairy.
I mean, I think the biggest one would be back. I don't think they're doing it.
Do you ever set up pilot programs or demonstration projects for methane capture?
I'm on the record. But I will say, because I guess it's true, NYSERDA used to have a pilot program for renewable natural gas. It's no longer off.
Okay, if only we had somebody from NYSERDA to talk to. Oh, wait a minute.
And Stu, you had raised your hand before.
Question, you know, my question,
Yeah.
you talked about it before. Last year at this time, there was a lot of talk about making sure that planned blowdowns were announced before it, and to the community. And, I've never gotten one in the last year, and it came from Jacobs, who mentioned it to me, I forgot about that. And, so this question, have there been blowdowns, planned blowdowns, but you can't have an emergency blowdown, you can't plan for it. What's the status of getting blowdowns announced?
Thank you for that question, Stu. I have to go back to the operators and ask the very question if we had any blowdowns. But it is a regulation in New York State that we not only notify the DEC of planned blowdowns in advance and unplanned blowdowns in a timely manner afterwards, but also the local community. And when that regulation was went into effect, or after, you know, it's enacted regulation. We came back to the town and said, who would you like to be the point person for this local notification? And the town wanted the same as we had before regulation. The chair of the, correct me if I'm wrong, Emergency Preparedness Committee.
Yeah,
That is the person that received
we don't.
the notification and the town.
So it's possible that there were no planned blowdowns.
It's very possible with the new equipment that's on there, and I touched on this earlier in the presentation of the pressurized hold. So because we can pressurize hold gas now instead of releasing it to the atmosphere when we turn off an engine. We're not blowing it down, we're keeping it in internal station pipe. And I think that makes the difference, not only in what we're emitting the atmosphere, but the difference in a plant flow down. But we do have, scheduled ESD testing. We used to emit that methane when we tested the emergency shutdown system to atmosphere. We no longer do that. With this project that we put in, we cap the stacks and we do capped ESD tests. So we're not even emitting methane and natural gas to the atmosphere when we do a test of the ESD for compliance with our regulations. So backwards looking, the engine 2-3 replacement project really did add a whole lot to the community in quality of life issues.
One other thing related to the plan, well, somewhat related to the plan, is that most people aren't aware that these monitors that we've had around the plant monitored more than just the plant.
Oh.
Because we found a leak, a Cornell's connection to the pipe, to NICEAG actually. And they were amazed that I knew about it when I contacted them. And they said they were in the middle of fixing it. They had leaks in the connections at this building on,
Chenal Road, right?
Genome Road.
No kidding.
And I thought that was dangerous actually, and not only not good for the community. And then I checked it after they were done fixing the leaks, and it was all fixed. There was, I didn't see it anymore on the monitors. And then the next thing was those fires in Canada last year. The fires in Canada, there were some days, it was over, the PM 2.5 was over 400.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that, you don't want to go outside without a mask. Literally,
Yeah.
with COVID, you didn't want to go out inside without a mask, and now with that, you couldn't go outside, you had to wear a mask to go outside. So what I'm telling you is that the monitors have actually been helpful beyond just monitoring the place. And it was very, I couldn't believe the numbers I was seeing from the fires directly north of us.
Does your data get published anywhere? Do you keep a dashboard or something?
I haven't, I haven't, it was published once in one of the like conference weekly or something like that,
Yeah.
published, but there was an article about it. I think it was conference weekly or something, but it was focused on the plan. This is just an aside to let you know that it's been beneficial for other ways, other things.
Yeah, it sounds like it verified what was going on with the Canadian air that we are all paying attention to for a few days there.
My wife now will not go outside every morning. She checks, she brings it up on the computer and checks what the numbers are to know if she has to wear a mask. I have to say this, since the fires last summer in Canada, it hasn't been there. I've seen as low as 0 PM 2.5 and as high as close to 100, but not much over that. And that's all necessarily where I'm at. Anything below 100 is, well, the CDC has their own system for that. You can look that up.
That's,
Anyway, I'm still on.
I believe the local fire department was notified plant flow down.
Anytime we're doing piping work where the community might hear something, we always contact the 911 center to notify everybody. If somebody hears something,
The
it's not
Department
an
of
emergency.
Emergency Response, Randall Common Valve thing. Plant flow down.
Right. That's more common.
I don't remember when.
Yeah, more common in pipeline.
And I'll have to get in touch with you about the person notified the town, because that committee, like, we couldn't get people to
Perfect. We'll update.
repopulate it.
That's up to
So,
you,
so yeah, we need to have a new person designated. So probably just my office and.
Wonderful. I'll make the change. Thank you.
any other questions?
But So question.
I put out an ask, I guess wait. Now Spring says she's good. And of course, we can reach out to you at any time, right?
Anytime.
And you'll answer any other
Hopefully everybody
questions.
has my cell number. I'm available on my cell.
You're not looking to retire anytime soon?
I know, or be retired.
Yeah.
All right.
And we'll get the slide deck up on the website.
All right, well, thanks to
Thank
you
you.
and
Thank
your
you for having me.
crew for coming up here and being available. to
Yeah, and we'll stick
everybody.
around. We have another line item.
Yeah, of course.
So thank you very much. Thank you, Stu, and pleasure. We'll see you next year at this time.
Yep. Right. Just bring up a nice sort of. And next up, we have it's a presentation about the Caswell Road Solar Project.
You guys got a story on the Cortland Standard,
Yeah.
but you probably already know that. Yeah.
All right.
Good evening. Is that all right, sir? All right, my name is Brian Jory. I'm the senior or the project development manager for the project. With me tonight on Zoom, we have Terry Carroll from the county, sustainability officer for the county and the project sponsor, as well as Bill Oberker from our office. Bill is responsible for the clean energy siting team, and he's going to give a little bit of an overview of the fire safety recommendations that have come out of NYSERDA poll. So a little bit of a change of course of what we've been talking about thus far in this meeting, moving into some of the renewables and the highlight that NYSERDA is pushing for the renewables and for, getting us to 70% renewable by 2030. So as part of that goal, the state has realized that there are a lot of sites that are not being looked at by the private sector because there's too costly to develop. And so our program, the Build Ready program, became enacted in 2020. And we started looking at thousands of sites around the state. And one of the real things that we're looking at is brownfields, landfill sites, former industrial sites, and also former fossil fuel generation sites, as well as now looking at parking lots. All of these sites, have inherent issues and risks associated with them. And we're finding that the private sector is not going after those projects. So what we're really going through and doing is de-risking them, securing necessary permits, approvals. And then once we get to that point of actually moving the project on, NYSERDA is not the end developer, we're just the initial developer. And then we will sell these projects off to a private entity who will own, operate, and maintain them. So as I mentioned, what we're really doing here is de-risking all of these sites. What the stage that we're at in this project for the Caswell Road project is really looking at the detailed assessment and design, as well as the permitting phase. The other thing, as I mentioned, these sites are inherently have some constraints to them. And so we understand that there'll be added cost, and the makeup of that cost is through a REC or renewable energy credit. And that's a 20-year agreement that would be between the private entity developing the site with NYSERDA, and that will basically cover that additional cost associated with the project site. What we really focus on is these turnkey development at no cost for the project host. So in this scenario, the county, there's no cost to them for this project. As I mentioned before, we will go through and competitively award these contracts with private developers to own, operate, and maintain. And there's also added revenue for the landowner, so the county in this scenario will receive payment for the use of the site, as well as a host community benefit package with the town to make sure that there's some sort of additional benefit as well, because the actual electricity for these projects, it's not a community solar project. These are directly connected to the grid. So they're grid connected. So we do have a host community package, and we're looking for feedback from any members of the community, as well as all of the boards that we've been talking to in terms of ways that we can work to address that. In terms of ideal sites that we're looking at, We're obviously looking for sites that are near existing substations or electrical transmission infrastructure. And what we're going through and doing is that environmental and regulatory de-risking. Where our statute makes us avoid agricultural land. And what we're looking at is some traditional just solar only projects, solar plus battery projects, which is what this project is, as well as solar carports as well in more urban areas. And we're typically targeting projects that are greater than 5 megawatts. In terms of where we're at with our community engagement, just last evening, we had a open house at the Neptune Fire Hall. We had roughly 20 people attend that, both a combination of neighbors, community, residents, and had some really good conversations, learned some great feedback from the community. So I think that was really helpful. We do have a survey that has gone live, as well as we're really trying to get some additional feedback. So if folks were not at that meeting, they're welcome to fill out that survey, and I'll send the survey link to you, Ray, as well, if you want to, promote that.
On the web, yeah.
Exactly. It will become on our website as well. We're still working through that right now, but that link will go on the NYSERDA website for the project as well. And then continuing our stakeholder engagement, meeting with community members, meeting with boards, local leadership, other state partners. We just had a meeting last Friday with the DEC in regards to the landfill portion of the project, as well as any business or property owners adjacent. As I mentioned, this community benefit associated with the project. So the project is currently owned by the county. There's no taxes obviously paid to for county-owned property. So the portion of the project, the electrical, or the generation project, will have a pilot for it. And we are already negotiating that or starting our discussions with the Tompkins County IDA on that as well, and working through all of that. Good question.
Do I have a question?
Yeah, I thought you had a question. Yeah, go right ahead. I'm happy to answer any questions as we go.
Yeah, so I'm just curious with the presentation that you gave last night or any others, what sort of feedback are you getting from the community or any interest groups that are tracking this project?
So we've received some support from members of the community in regards to the battery portion of the project and providing some renewable and energy to the grid, as well as some of that sustainable, connection components where you have some reliability, larger reliability with the battery. So we did receive some positive feedback on that. We received some comments from some of the neighbors about stormwater, as well as other sort of environmental aspects of the project, which we anticipate as we go through the full review process. We'll have studies that will be provided to the town to go through all of the things we've looked at in terms of stormwater, view shed. We did have some questions of neighbors, trying to figure out where they were in relation to the site and if they'd be able to see the site. For example, that was a couple of questions that had come up on if there was any, truck traffic that they would, see as part of the project. And obviously, other than just construction, there would be no long-term traffic impacts on the project.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about this is it is a dump or a former dump. It's not like we're losing, pristine parkland. But there is a cap on that. And to maintain the, decomposing or whatever might be emitted, is there any threat of a compromise of that cap from this project?
No threat at all. So what we'll do on that portion, and let me just pull up the actual plan here to kind of show it. The capped landfill on this plan is in orange, the bottom portion of the drawing here. And that capped area will all be ballasted, so it will be a weighted system that is put on top of the landfill. It won't be protruding through the cap by any means.
Yeah.
And that has to go through, obviously, the DEC Office of Materials Management, who reviews regularly all landfills as well as closed landfills, and they will be reviewing all of the
Monitoring.
And the county monitors it, and they'll be incorporating. It was discussed a couple of weeks ago that basically there's a very old monitoring plan from when the project was capped originally, and that will be updated to reflect any updates to the site, including but not limited to all of the ballasted weighted structures on it, how that will impact the long-term operations and maintenance. But in short, there won't be any permanent impact, that will be looked at as part of all of the environmental studies that have been done and will be done in the future.
Okay, one other thing I want to ask is, when we approved these solar projects previously, one of the things that made it a little easier to swallow as a community were the revenues coming off the project. Do you have any sort of schedule or estimate on the pilot funding that would yield from this project? Like what the county, school and the towns might.
We haven't gotten that far, but we're very close in terms of we've talked to the IDA, and there's an IDA fee associated with the project. And that would be basically covering what the IDA to negotiate the pilot on everyone's behalf. And then there's, I believe, standard splits associated with that based on school, town,
Yeah.
all of those things. We haven't gotten to that level yet. My understanding is we cannot execute any agreement with the IDA until seeker is completed as
Right.
part of the review process. So we're sort of trying to do these things concurrently, but we'll definitely,
But if
keep
you
you
could come up
posted.
with an estimate,
Yeah.
we would love to see that.
Definitely.
and
No, I'm
I'm
sure
sure
we will have that in
A lot
the
of
near
folks
future.
would.
Definitely. And the other important piece to note, again, is there is no revenue now.
No,
So-
there's no,
The gain
there's not
is
much money in.
tremendous, I would think, right? So in terms of 0 to whatever the ultimate amount will be is definitely going to be higher
Is
than
that-
it is currently.
I should know this, but is that Dryden or Ithaca School District?
Dryden.
It's Dryden.
Right. The other just piece to mention is in terms of the community benefit. This is the second project that NYSERDA's Build Ready program has developed. The first project that we did, they did not have any specific community benefit that they were looking for. So what we ended up doing in that community is basically having it was a similar size project, and there was a $200,000 micro grant program established as part of it. And local businesses in the area were able to apply. I think it was the local IDA is administering that. And so that was the community benefit in that project. Here, we have spoken, to community members and leaders in terms of Dryden Fiber being an option. If, there's a way to bump up the phasing of that in this, in this general vicinity, that definitely could be something looked at. Obviously, other community benefits, and we're going to talk through this more when Bill talks in a little bit from our office, but first responder training for the solar facility, as well as specifically the battery component, as well as other sort of STEM or STEAM education associated with the proposed project. In terms of kind of where we're at, we have met with planning staff multiple times on the project, going back to last summer. We met at the county's offices, and I think some members of the town as well, to discuss the project. We did have another initial meeting back in January at the county office to kind of kick off some more detailed concepts, plans that we had. And then we provided an initial presentation to the planning board. Last month, as I mentioned, we had our open house. And now we're discussing the project a little bit tonight here. And our intent is to submit a full planning board application for special use plan or site plan special use permit within the next week or so to kind of continue this conversation. As I mentioned before, the county nominated this site to us in 2020. The landfill has been closed and capped since 1985. There's approximately 83 buildable acres on site. As I mentioned as well, the area in orange, on the bottom portion of this drawing is the capped landfill, and that will be all ballasted, so there'll be no ground penetration. The areas in red and green are county-owned but not landfill. So those would be traditional solar installation where you have posts that are pounded into the ground. We have it proposed right now as a 12.5 megawatt solar project and a 2.5 megawatt battery energy storage portion of the project. The interconnection route goes through a private property owner in yellow, the Beck Farm. We have a good neighbor agreement with them, which has allowed us to do a full survey, and we're continuing through the full design process and working ultimately to obtain a final easement to do basically temporary construction through the farm, and then after that, the line will basically be buried at a minimum of 48 inches deep. And then the Beck family will be able to continue to farm the property as though there's no restriction over it at that point. And then the actual interconnection is at Pruville Road. And was there a question? I'm sorry, I just see a hand raised there. Spring.
I have a question, but I also realize that maybe it's something that Bill will cover, you said later, because I know in my mind, I've got a lot of questions regarding the fire related trainings and the fire suppressions around the batteries, which it sounds like you guys are going to talk about. And so you don't have to answer it here. Maybe it's further in the presentation, but I'm also interested to just be a little smarter on the battery component of this from a risk standpoint, environmentally, as well as from a fire perspective. You know, I know technology with batteries is changing, but batteries usually mean a lot of chemicals. And I just wonder what kind of risks are involved from the environmental standpoint with those.
Yeah, if I could we can hold maybe to discuss that until after, Bill presents, but definitely we can have a conversation after that. And we can certainly continue that conversation as well. All right, just a little bit further of a blow up of the solar facility. One thing just to note, in case you're out in the area, currently the highway department, the county highway department has a laydown area on the site. If you can see with the cursor kind of right in the middle of the site, as part of the solar project, that location that they were working on wasn't really conducive to the overall layout. So they're actually moving their location closer to the road, which you can see here in this rectangular area. So I believe they are doing some of that right now, but that has nothing to do with the solar project, and that's outside of the scope of our project as well.
Just to be clear, the county highway department.
Correct. Okay. Yes. And just a really brief explanation of why we're looking to do the battery storage here. There's a lot of benefits to battery storage. And I think one of the key benefits here in this renewable world that I live in is that we're trying to promote renewable energy. The peaks for production of renewable energy is not necessarily at the same time as the peak usage and peak demand. So by incorporating battery storage into this renewable energy project, we'll be able to expand upon the greater use of the facility, as well as help with grid reliability in terms of all of our projects are connected directly to in this scenario, NYSEG, the utility grid. So this will help with the larger reliability in the area on the transmission system.
But the decision on what battery technology to use in this project will be up to the developer or NYSERDA?
So at this point, that is one and the same, but ultimately, yes, it would be sold to a private developer.
Okay, so you would actually install the batteries.
The NYSERDA is going through and developing, we're obtaining all the permits. Once the permits are in hand, basically, then the project will be sold off, and any conditions, let's say that the town board, planning board puts on the project, the ultimate buyer would have to adhere to those. And in terms of, there's multiple types of battery technologies. We are evaluating, and after the planning board meeting, we're definitely taking those comments to heart and looking at other technologies. This technology is, we're looking at a 4-hour duration battery, whereas some of the other technologies are like 12, 18-hour, 24-hour. So it changes the dynamic of the project. It changes kind of the modeling, both from a financial as well as energy component, and what NYSEG and the New York Independent System Operator is looking at as part of the project. So right now, we're, for this project, we are looking at lithium ion, but there are other technologies. And those, we're going to look at those and provide some sort of an explanation at a subsequent meeting in terms of what other, rationale we can provide in terms of why we chose this technology versus others.
We had a lively discussion at the planning board meeting about this that we will not rehash.
Yeah,
now.
I think we'll certainly continue it for sure. But with that, I think it would be helpful to turn it over to Bill. So Bill is not associated with the Build Ready program, just to make that clear. Bill is part of a larger initiative at NYSERDA. And Bill, I think, would be really helpful to explain a little bit of the battery safety components, and then we certainly can answer any questions after that. Was
Yeah,
there another
Marie
question?
has a question.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm not remembering this right. You mentioned, mandating purchase of rent. Will the rent be required to use the York State produce?
I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't know the answer to that. Whether I would assume New York State, but I don't know for sure how that, the larger rec market works, because they're opening up the rec market, so I don't exactly know how and if that can cross state lines.
I was questioning whether there would be New York rec available, but I'll let you get back to me.
NYSERDA will be issuing the rec. I know that much. So NYSERDA would be New York, but in terms of who would ultimately purchase those recs, I don't know how that would all play out, but I can certainly get back to you.
Thank you.
All right, so Bill, I'm gonna stop sharing and then you should be able to share your screen.
All right, thanks, Brian. And thanks everyone for taking the time to attend tonight. As Brian mentioned, my name is Bill Obercare. I'm a senior project manager on NYSERDA's Clean Energy Siting team. Really just here to talk to folks tonight and in a bit of detail about the recently released fire code recommendations from the governor's interagency fire safety working group. And really doing that with a specific eye toward, there were 15 recommendations in that report, but many of them are completely within local power to implement right now. You just really have to decide to do that. So that's really the focus of my part of this presentation here, is just to let you know where those things are and what you should be requiring from folks as they go through the permitting process. So the first and most important one is going to be the peer review. And I'll just give folks a little note about the structure of this presentation as well, where we see 2020 fire code at the top. That's going to be the existing regulation. And then you'll see in future slides, let's do an example right now if we can. Fire Safety Working Group is what FSWG means. REC means recommendation. So first we're going to go through the current regulation and then go through what the Fire Safety Working Group recommended about that regulation. So right now, what a peer review is, basically, a lot of our code enforcement officials in New York State have seen a battery maybe once, certainly not more than 4 times. So that doesn't give you a lot of background and experience to be able to evaluate these system designs. And the peer review is a way to address that. So in the 2020 code, we have these keywords at the beginning: where required by the AHJ, meaning where required by the code official. AHJ means authority having jurisdiction, if folks don't know. In this context, it's almost always going to mean the code official. So where required by the code official, the system owner is responsible for retaining and furnishing the services of a registered design professional or special expert to perform as a peer reviewer. So what that means is you, the AHJ, can require that the energy storage developer bring in somebody who this isn't their first time or even their 4th time reviewing an energy storage project application. They've done this before. They understand all the associated documents like the UL 9540A report, like the hazard mitigation analysis. These are all very technical documents that do require a level of expertise to be able to interpret correctly. Most of our 1,600 jurisdictions throughout New York State, not trying to single out town of Dryden by any means, almost all of our jurisdictions in New York State do not have that expertise locally. The only one that we are really sure has that expertise is the city of New York with FDNY, who actually, created a lot of these regulations from nothing. So we have this element of the code that allows you to bring those folks in, and a lot of folks who are working in this space, coincidentally enough, are the people at FDNY who created these regulations in the first place and have since kind of retired and done this sort of consulting for AHJs. So there are a lot of folks in New York where you're in really good hands. They've really, really vetted this technology. They're very familiar with it. Probably more familiar with it than anyone in the nation. Our code allows you to get the developer to hire those consultants for you to help you review this application, the project application. So what the Fire Safety Working Group recommended is we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to make it required for all projects. So instead of the AHJ or the code official needing to require that on a case-by-case basis, what the Fire Safety Working Group recommended to the New York State Code Council is we're going to take the optionality out of it, and we're just going to require this peer review for all projects because it's a really good idea. And given the circumstances under which we're working, it's completely appropriate to have that extra set of eyes on every single project application that comes into the state. So that's really what it is. The only difference that the central difference that the Fire Safety Working Group is recommending is switch from optional to mandatory. So you as the AHJ, code officials in the town of Dryden, you can, functionally erase the difference between the current code and the working group recommendation by requiring that peer review for every single project. It is currently in your power to do that. All you have to do is have your code enforcement officer exercise that power. So that, I think, probably the most important thing here, at least from a project design and review perspective, just to make sure very simply that we have people reviewing the project designs who are familiar with the technology. Nothing more complicated about it than that. It is critical with energy storage because, as folks likely know, there is a fire hazard associated with the technology. A lot has been done to mitigate that fire hazard. But if we have folks reviewing the nature of that fire hazard who don't quite understand what they're reviewing, the chances that they're going to mitigate it in accordance with the test results that were received from that product is probably pretty slim. We have another one here. Again, this is the current fire code. Within the commissioning plan, there are 12 tenets, 12 requirements within a commissioning plan. One of them is that every single project as part of the commissioning plan identify personnel responsible for responding to incidents. Through the analysis of the Fire Safety Working Group, we have kind of uncovered that this is not happening, certainly not universally. And again, this is something that's perfectly in the AHJ's hands to make sure this happens. The developer is required by code to contract for these emergency response services to be able to deal with incidents should they occur. Because we don't want to leave our local first responders, who are often volunteer, trying to put out a fire that they don't, frankly, understand how this works. They've probably read in the news that it's not like other fires. That's true to a certain extent, but those rumors are, there are rumors that overblow that as well. We have the power in the code to make sure that the developer is providing relief to our local first responders and providing them assistance with people who know the ins and outs of the system, theoretically know the ins and outs of the site to help quarterback that response in the event of an emergency. This is currently in the code. It's technically required for every project. Once again, it's just, the code enforcement, regulations are only as good as their enforcement. If you have code enforcement officers who are not making sure that this happens, then it might not happen. So this is a huge one to be able to exercise, which I think feeds into the next one. So in addition to the commissioning plan requirement to have documentation that the developer has contracted with an entity to handle any incidents that may arise with the system, we have a separate section of the code that allows us, again, where required by the AHJ, you see that language at the top, we can have a whole fire remediation team that is supplied by the energy storage developer. The reason for the existence of these folks is you know, the Chameau fire in the North Country was a good example, that burned for a few days. We, you know, the folks who wrote this code coming from the city of New York, a lot of them, and FDNY, they understood that local fire departments shouldn't have to, you know, be out there for days. So they built this fire remediation team into the code. And the purpose of this is to relieve those first responders. So once the site is under control again, you have folks, so you're not draining your volunteer first responder time. You have folks who are there watching it and calling in for backup as needed. And again, these folks should have a familiarity both with the product being used in the system and with the actual project itself, with that specific site. Because the developer is contracting with these people and training them to know what to do in this situation. But it's that pesky language, once again, where required by the AHJ. In order for the AHJ to require this, they have to know it's an option. It is currently an option. And this is another thing that I would suggest every time for every project in New York State, the AHJ should be requiring a fire remediation team, because these fires can last for longer than, say, a standard house fire. And we need to be prepared for that. That comes with the territory of this technology. Fortunately, the code gives us the tool to be prepared for that. And it's really just up to us to use it. So fire mitigation personnel, because that is such a critical function, to not just leave our local volunteer first responders to deal with this problem by themselves. The Fire Safety Working Group recommendation is to make, again, this mandatory for all projects. So we're just removing the optionality. And then the Fire Safety Working Group has parameters on when is acceptable to arrive on scene. So you'll see here that the requirement is that fire mitigation personnel are available for dispatch within 15 minutes. That's actually not from the Fire Safety Working Group. That's from the International Code Council. That language is in the International Fire Code. In case folks don't know, the New York State uniform codes are drawn from the international codes. So the New York State Fire Code is based on the International Fire Code. So that language about 15-minute dispatch, that's in a national standard on which the New York standard is based. What the Fire Safety Working Group added to this requirement is this 4-hour response time. The Fire Safety Working Group, and this was actually coming from the State Office of Fire Prevention and Control, is saying that we need folks to be there within 4 hours to make sure that we get this situation under control quickly. Other than that, this is pretty much the same as the existing requirement. The only difference being, for the existing requirement, the AHJ has to, say that this is required or we're not going to issue a permit. If the Fire Safety Working Group recommendation is accepted by the Code Council and incorporated into the next iteration of the Fire Code, it's just going to be mandatory for all projects. Now, that will still require local enforcement, but typically when things are mandatory, industry gets in the habit of kind of complying with that. So there's kind of less of a need for those careful eyes in that scenario. There are also a few other kind of more nuanced, or I guess we could call them extra elements of this recommendation. I'm not going to get into those now because, frankly, for these purposes, I don't think that we need to deal with that. Again, the audience for the Fire Safety Working Group recommendations was the New York State Code Council. Even though it was released publicly for comment, it does have a very specific audience. So a lot of these suggestions, recommendations are specifically targeted toward those folks. And then you'll see the last two bullets here are very much fall into that category. Here's another Fire Safety Working Group recommendation. So a lot of this recommendation is saying that the fire code should create a redundancy with requirements in the National Electric Code, so that, we have the same requirements appearing in two places, so they're more difficult to miss, both on the AHJ side and the industry side. But what the Fire Safety Working Group is recommend adding here is the basically a site map that's outside the fence line for first responders, so that they will know where relevant equipment is. They will know where deflagration panels are. What a deflagration panel is when there's pressure that builds up inside the cabinet. A deflagration panel will vent that pressure to prevent an explosion. We need our first responders to understand where those vents are going to be opening. Or if those events do malfunction, we need first responders to know where those vents are to stay away from them because there might be an explosion risk there. So things like that, where we're identifying outside of the project fence line, potential hazards in the area and just providing that information visually to folks responding on the scene immediately. That's one of the things that we, the Fire Safety Working Group recommended to the Code Council. It's also something that can be, is perfectly appropriate for a site plan review. Obviously before incorporating things into local law and site plan review, you have to check with your municipal attorney just to make sure. Please don't take my word for it. But I'm going to give you a strong hint that this is worth considering and checking with your municipal attorney to be able to embed this suggestion or this recommendation into your site plan review so that you don't have to wait for the next iteration of the uniform code update. And it won't matter whether or not the Code Council accepts this recommendation from the working group. You can build this into your local law because it pertains to site plan and not a fire hazard. I'm going to move on from there. So I said peer review is probably the most important recommendation here. Either tied for most important or a very close second is this one here, emergency response plans and regular fire department training. There is the requirement in the code for an emergency response plan is a bit unclear because the way the code deals with emergency response is to outsource it, right? You're supposed to be contracting with people who are coming in so that the local first responders don't really need to be that involved. That kind of negate it from the last code iterations point of view that in many ways negated the need for an emergency response plan. NYSERDA's model energy storage zoning law has an emergency response plan requirement. We did actually run this one by land use attorneys. The emergency response plan requirement is perfectly appropriate to add into your site plan review as a requirement, in addition to a fire operations plan, if that's appropriate for your community. So this is something that, again, can be incorporated right now, can be required from projects right now. We don't need to wait for a future code update. Regular fire department training. It's another thing. You can have local permitting hinge on an agreement to train local first responders. And having spoken to industry, quite a bit over the last decade, and much more so since the fires last summer, they are very, very willing to do this. They want to train local first responders on how to deal with incidents. What we found actually is that the reluctance from the training perspective is often more on the first responder side, where they don't necessarily want to show up and do the training annually, or they have, they're volunteer, their time is valuable. So if we're requiring, the fire department training is something that industry, the developer is going to welcome that as a requirement. And I'm sure that they would, welcome, any sort of bridge building with the fire department to get a good relationship in place, because these folks really should be working together. Hopefully they'll never need to hopefully there will be no incident where they need to work together. But in terms of preparedness, it's really great to have a open, clear line of communication between the folks who are responsible for this technology and the local first responders. And that's something, again, that's in local jurisdiction's power to do right now. We don't need to wait for another code update. And I think this is the last big one. So we have this language in our current code, and it appears over and over again. It says rooms, areas, or walk-in units. That is because the code was written at a time before these kind of non-enterable cabinet systems that look just like a walk-in unit in a lot of ways, but you can't enter them. They have, since the 2020 code was written and enacted, they have really dominated the market, these cabinet systems. So NYSERDA's guidance has been to treat the cabinet systems just like you would a walk-in room or area. Department of State's guidance has been to treat cabinet systems like you would treat a room area or walk-in unit for a code enforcement official. So the Fire Safety Working Group is just recommending that the Code Council make that explicit. So again, this is another one that's in the local jurisdiction's power right now. If you see a cabinet system, and you know, especially if anyone tries to make a case that a cabinet is not a room area or walk-in unit, there's no reason to treat it any differently. With the exception of fire suppression requirements, that gets a little bit trickier because we can get into nesting doll requirements. If you have an indoor system that is a cabinet, do you then need a fire suppression system in the cabinet and in the room? That can actually be actively harmful depending on the product. So we're leaving out the fire suppression because there are other fire suppression requirements that are going to best determine what we should do on a product by product and a project by project basis. And that's really it. These, you know, the most important things that came out of the Fire Safety Working Group recommendations are very easily the peer review and the emergency response plans and local fire department training. NYSERDA is working with our standards quality assurance team to be able to entirely revamp the NYSERDA inspections process for these systems so that we're relying less on contracted local inspectors, and we have folks, again, who have the expertise, the familiarity with this specific technology to not replace AHJ inspections. That is not the goal at all. It's more of a sweep behind the AHJ inspections to make sure that we're not missing critical nonconformances to code. That's really what it is. Think of it as backup and not as a, you know, usurping power, because that's the program that our SQA team is building here at NYSERDA. We have some additional resources here if folks are interested in this issue and folks want to read more about the recommendations that I've been talking about. Those are all linked here. The Interagency Fire Safety Working Group website is home to most of this up top. That was just created in December 2023. So I'd urge folks to take a look around there. It's relatively new. There's a lot of great information. And then my team, the Clean Energy Siting team at NYSERDA, has various guidebooks separated by technology that are designed for local governments. You all are the intended audience for these resources. They are designed to speak to you. Myself and the rest of my team are always here if anything in these guidebooks is not clear or if there are any other questions that aren't covered by the guidebooks. And then finally, NYSERDA has the Energy Storage Program, which is the incentive program. They have some resources available there as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. And it looks like we already have one from Craig.
Hi, Craig Anderson. I'm a planning board member. I was at the Brian and Terry's meeting last month, and thank you for the presentation. You answered a lot of questions that the planning board had. I wish you were at the last meeting. And I hope this is recorded so we could send it on to the board so we can, because that answers a lot of our questions. I do have one question regarding, actually I have two questions, but so fire apparatus equipment needed to suppress a fire for 4 hours while your response team comes. What is needed for that? And
nothing has been identified. That is something that we have had many discussions about to try to find something that might be needed, particularly because industry is saying, you know, we're happy to do it. We just don't, you know, we just don't know what outside of routine firefighting equipment that you need for these fires. To this date, I have not heard one specific piece of equipment that is necessary for this type of fire that is not necessary for any other type of fire. So I think it's a matter of making sure that your local fire department is equipped with what they need to fight and contain fires. And I think if anything's missing there, it's perfectly reasonable to ask the energy storage developer if they are willing to, you know, provide that equipment. But in terms of special equipment, I have never heard one specific piece of special equipment that is required to fight fires associated with this technology. And I have asked everyone that I came across who might know the answer to that question.
So it's a matter of just setbacks and let it burn, or?
Containment. So there is, there's the for most energy storage systems, the wisdom is, or the best practice is to let the fire consume all of the fuel for the fire, make sure that it does not spread beyond the project. Because once that fire starts in the battery, it's dead. You can't save it. And the fire code is putting the batteries in, putting parameters around the batteries that no one should be there to be harmed. Most of the equipment, as I said earlier, is non-enterable now. So there's, most of the time there's no chance that anyone's kind of hiding out in there. So really it just becomes, we've got a fence around the project as required by the NEC and the fire code. It becomes a matter of just not letting that fire spread. So it's a containment strategy. And then it's, as you pointed out, just letting the fire consume everything that it can consume until it burns out.
But
Thank
that's,
you very much.
it'll be like an emission issue then, though. So, I mean, what types of, I mean, there are like any types of like firefighting, I don't know, like foams or things that are used to get that under control that will also reduce these emissions?
There's some fire suppression equipment in the cabinets, in the units where we are. So that's going to do a lot of the lifting. If you try, so these things are enclosed. So if you are spraying the outside of the cabinet with water, it's not hitting the things that are hot. The water's not hitting the things that are on fire. And actually, because what needs to happen is the fire needs to consume all of the fuel, cooling the temperature with the water can actually inhibit the fire's ability to do that and make it burn longer. In terms of, toxicity from smoke, our Office of Fire Prevention and Control at both the Warwick and the Chaumont fires took air quality sampling while the fires were burning, inside the project fence line, outside the project fence line, outside the project fence line. There was no evidence of anything that OFPC tested for, which is run of the mill, which they test for in all fires. No contaminants migrated out of the project line that were over. I think it's like 0.4 parts per million was the lower threshold for harm to human health, and they were like 0.1. So not even outside of the project fence line. All the data that we have to date shows that we are not even approaching levels of chemicals that are harmful to human health, toxic smoke that is harmful to human health. And if you go inside the project fence line, which if a giant grid scale battery is on fire, nobody, first responders included, the developer industry, the manufacturer, nobody should be in that fence line under any circumstances. But even inside the fence line, the toxicity was not that bad, which was kind of a surprise to everyone, especially given, the reports, the anecdotal reports, and some of the media reports from the area at the time. When we actually got the data back and looked at it, we found that, a lot of the concern was not justified, to say the least.
Right, Chris, sorry.
Could you compare for us the size, number of cabinets and so on between the proposed project here on Caswell Road with what was actually on fire in line?
The one in Lyme was about twice the size of the proposed one.
In the spring, did you want to ask yours or?
I guess mine is largely, I think, question I put in chat was already answered, but outside of fire, what are the risks related to like groundwater, or chemicals, at the end of life, or if we have an earthquake, or, something else like, other than just the fire? Are there groundwater concerns?
Groundwater was tested at the East Hampton fire and the Chameau fire. Lyme, Chameau, I use those interchangeably. No evidence of contamination at either site. No evidence of migration or I'm sorry, not even migration. There was the particularly for East Hampton, it was the most stark. Levels of metals and things in the soil right in the vicinity of the fire were consistent with control samples taken in the same vicinity but far away from the fire. Same thing with the water samples that were taken. So Lyme has an inordinate number of residential wells that they use. So that was why Department of Environmental Conservation, tested those. I believe while the fire was still burning, they were testing the water. Again, they didn't find anything out of the ordinary. I think at the end of last year, beginning of this year, DEC agreed to go back to Lyme and do further testing out of an abundance of caution. I am not sure where that effort stands to date, but in the immediate wake of the fires, all of the testing that was done did not yield any cause for concern. Again, for the chemicals or metals that were tested for in those specific sites. I'm not here claiming to make any sort of universal statements, because these products, the actual energy storage systems, are not one size fits all. They use different chemistries. They have different fire suppression equipment. They have different components to them. So really what we understand is what we've had the misfortune of being able to study. I guess there's kind of a silver lining in everything, since no one got hurt and there was no damage to any property outside of the batteries. Based on everything that we know, there was nothing of concern.
Any other questions for Bill?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. This is something that I think we're eager to incorporate, and previously has come up in discussions with our fire departments. So I think they'll be more than willing to participate in the training, since they've already asked about it. What sort of cost would this add to a developer to write this into the site plan? And do they ever resist, or do they expect it?
I can maybe start to answer that question. And one thing I just want to indicate is all of the recommendations that Bill and the Clean Energy Siting team have proposed us as a Build Ready program for the Caswell Road solar site and battery storage site are more than willing and interested in participating in all of those recommendations. So I honestly don't know the cost yet, but whatever the cost is, this project will bear that cost.
And can you share any information about so we get a sense of proportionality here? How often do we get fires at battery storage? And my understanding is it's fairly rare. And we want to be prepared, of course, but we also don't want to cause alarm about something that's as infrequent as I understand these things to be. Do you have any numbers or data?
I think I'll defer to Bill if Bill has any info on that. I know in looking at all what you did last summer, so.
Yeah, EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute, maintains a global database of energy storage system fires. In the US to date, I think there are between 10 and 15. It's negligible.
10 or 15 annually?
No.
What? Okay.
Total history. If you're dealing with energy storage systems, we should jump in there and say, the lithium ion batteries that are generating headlines and unfortunately often fatal in the city of New York, we're not talking about the same thing. Those are lithium ion batteries that go into e-bikes, into micro mobility devices. They do not have the same layers of regulation, of oversight, of safety industry testing. So it's not the same thing. And the EPRI, again, Electric Power Research Institute database is a global database that is only looking at energy storage systems, going from residential up to utility scale systems. So that is actually a great way to quantify, the level of risk inherent to the conversation that we're having here without adding the static of kind of black market second use batteries that are being put into an e-bike. But to date in the United States, the last time I checked that EPRI database, it was between 10 and 15. And they make the news when they happen. So I think one happened in Idaho since the ones in New York. And other than that, maybe one or two residential, and that's it.
So they're infrequent.
Yes.
Okay, that's important to note. Yeah, this is
Okay.
great that there's so much research already gone into this. And when we started discussing this a couple of weeks ago, I think with the fire departments, there were just a lot of questions. What is the status of preparedness on this topic? And not knowing, we were left guessing, and now it's great. It's assuring to know that this much thought and preparation has gone into the topic.
Yeah, we thought Bill would be really helpful tonight to explain it. And Ray, I assume that we could give this recording to the planning board for them to
Yeah.
review as well. So,
All right, great. Thank you. I think we're all set.
great.
Yeah,
Well,
nice job.
Thank you all for your time tonight. And like I mentioned, our intention is to submit a full application in the coming week here. Or next week is our intention. And once we start that process, obviously, I know we'll be back before this board, and any questions that come up, we're happy to answer those. So
Okay, this sounds exciting.
thank you all.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, so I'm gonna next move on to open the public hearing on the acceptance of a easement from NYSEG for a portion of the expansion to the South Hill Recreation Way Trail. Share the notice. And there's also a intermunicipal agreement between Town of Ithaca, Danby, Caroline, Dryden.
Can you move that tab?
And that's separate from the easement. The public hearing, though, is for the easement, which is this document. And for Dryden, it's what about?
Less than a mile,
It's less than a mile,
Mile.
yeah.
but the entire easement goes from the end of the present South Hill Recway at Burns Road out to the county line.
Right.
So most of it being through the town of Caroline.
So let's open it up for comment from the public now, either here or in Zoom land.
Gonna connect to the Finger Lakes Trail out there. That'll be really neat. It'll be a nice additional connection.
Well, I mean, it goes out, I know brings it out to the Tioga County line.
Correct. Yep.
This has been a long time coming. It's my first comment. We're talking about this.
Yeah.
Over a dozen years. Maybe 20.
And there is a cross component to this. It's the entire easement is 36,000. Dryden's proportionate share is $5,635.
Say that 56.
$5,635.
Yeah. That's fifth whereas.
In the resolution.
So are you moving it?
Well, we have to leave the public hearing open
Oh.
for till about 8 o'clock. I'll share the resolution real quick.
And you sent this letter out to whom?
Yep, all the neighbors within 500 feet were given, were sent a letter.
How many were there?
I think we're talking less than 10 people that are within a half mile or within 500 feet of the trail through the Dryden section. What's that? I do not see anyone here. Huh?
Well, meantime, while it's open, we can just move through some other stuff. Rick's not here, so Ray, you have anything planning other than all the other?
The update, no, most of the update was about items that are already on the agenda tonight. One thing I didn't get into the update, but we'll see in the future, the planning board this month will be getting an introduction on INHS is proposing a project at 5 Freeze Road. If you'll remember, this was a site plan approved in 2020, but was never developed. So now we have a new concept and a new proposal coming back. And that'll be first seen by the planning board in 1 week.
Just a question. So we approved a site plan.
Mhm.
How close does this new proposal have to track that?
They're coming back with a new proposal, so it'll be a new site plan.
It's a whole new site. Plan.
Yep.
Gonna replace that.
Yep.
Okay.
It keeps a lot of the core principles that were exhibited in that original project, but they are making modifications.
But we're not tied to this anything prior. I mean,
No, it's gonna be a
Nope.
It's a new.
it's a new project, so we could.
Yeah.
Rethink anything that we previously thought.
Right. No, that was barely started on the
Well,
old.
it was like the connection to the sewer, I think, to the road, but nothing inside that.
Right. We have the extension that's done as part of this Varna sewer and water project. So stubs were put in anticipation. But really, it's a very small part of the utilities are built out right now.
All right, well, thanks. Chris.
Once again, there's a lot going on, and once again, limit my time tonight. Where you got the most important and or timely items. Jason said the last time.
Yeah.
Run out of time. Guys.
Yep. Yep.
And fortunately, I don't have to speak all really about the Scandal Road. There's now, you know, pretty much as I do. Gonna continue to work with everybody on that. I think that to a large degree, all of our concerns, not knowing very much, have been viewed. Alice Green has been very helpful in sharing her network so that I can learn more about how NYSERDA different branch of estimates for it can assist the town's fire departments in updating the heating, cooling, lighting, and insulation in their firehouses. Those would reduce their energy bills, although it might not be possible to get funding to actually replace any equipment. We're gonna continue to explore every option. It does look as if, at the very least, all the fire departments in town will get a free professionally done energy audit, so they can, figure out, understand better what individual system should be considered. That's not going to. At the beginning of the month, I attended a 2-day peer support training class that was put on by Tompkins County and the National Alliance of Mental Illness. It's an excellent class. It's the workbook, couple of great instructors. They've highlighted ways in which trained emergency responders can help their peers who are experiencing difficulties in their life. Although I was the only fire guy, surrounded by cops from about 10 different agencies. That was fine. We all share the same issues. Co-workers that have troubles with PTSD, alcoholism, drug use, family issues, anger issues, having huge differences of opinion on how to best do something that sometimes ends up with a bad outcome. The county is forming an Overwatch peer program to go over these issues. I'm gonna try to get members of all town's fire departments. I also attended a 2-day course out near Oil City, Pennsylvania, that wound up having me certified as a recruitment/retention coordinator. This course was written and presented by experienced instructors from the International Association of Fire Chiefs, covered every aspect of both the recruiting and retention processes. And how basically how to wage a campaign for both volunteer programs. It was actually a 3-day course because before I go there, I had to sit at my computer here and do a full 8-hour course online, complete the tons of tests. So the instructors provided a wealth. Not to it. This is all the stuff I got, plus what is up here. So that I can share all of this with our departments here in the town. I also submitted a sort of informal request to the administrator of that whole program. So that Dryden be considered as a site for the next class. The classes are all paid for with a safer grant, so essentially no cost to the town. We're gonna have to wait probably almost a year because it is a safer grant. They're just entering into, writing their grant proposal, doing it for next year, but hopefully, we can have these people come to the town of Dryden, people from all the fire departments around can attend this excellent class and learn as much as I did about recruiting and retention. I think I told you last month that there was gonna be a certified first responder class starting in April. That didn't happen. Largely because the decision was made by whoever was arranging for the class to wait until September. Take advantage of the fact that that's when all the Varna student members can attend, and that will bring the first student cost rate up. So we're looking at hopefully September, they have a certified first responder. The Varna Fire Department has a member who has I believe a master's in physical therapy from IC, and she is currently working as a physical therapist in an effort to help all the fire departments give their members some sort of basic training on movement, exercises, all those sorts of things, thereby reducing injuries. I asked her to develop a training. I just met with her Tuesday. She's got an excellent start to it and looking at it my thought to her, suggestion to her was to get a couple other people from Varna to help her expand both the curriculum and also make it more fun. Have more audience participation. So she's gonna keep working on it. I would suspect, that there's gonna be kind of a lull in the activity during the summer. So again, looking to have this training start, whatever departments want. Maybe in September. And the final thing I've got to say, is that I've been in fairly regular contact with a really sharp woman who works for the New York State Department of Labor. She has jurisdiction over all fire departments in New York State, both career and volunteer. Jennifer Bierner, she has put together what I think is a really great training called firefighter requirements versus staff. I think we've had some discussions about that at some of the meetings. So in this presentation, it spells out the real answers to many of the questions that plague the New York State Fire Service. Our presentation lays out a lot of things, but includes things like, what are the legally enforceable differences between interior and exterior firefighters, many questions surrounding turnout gear and other parts of the PPE, firefighter physicals, training requirements, virtually everything having to do with the fire departments from a legal point of view. This is really, she was willing to travel to Brighton to make this presentation. Once I get a chance to both gain the approval and also work up some possible dates, with our fire departments here in town. I guess a great question for you all. Would you like to see this?
Yeah. I would.
Yeah, do you have it electronically?
I'm
Yeah.
sure she can send it, she can send it, I'll ask her to put it on. But, and I'm wrestling with the concept that should she come to each individual fire department, should she come to a central location, give it all, we'll figure it out. But anyway, great information that we all really. Questions? I'm related.
No, so it's,
It's good. Thank you.
we approve.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
Good work.
Yeah, great. All right, so we'll just move down to the next thing. We don't have anybody from the county. So we'll go right on to the 11A. It's the site plan amendment for Borger. So Ray, can you?
Yeah, so this is a fence replacement. The present is a chain link fence with barbed wire at the top, and the new fence replacement is for much better security for the facility, a critical facility. And you'll see in the application package, the presentation of the new fence, while very robust, is probably much more attractive than what exists right now. So this was reviewed at the last planning board meeting, and they had no specific recommendations other than just to approve.
Yep, you go ahead.
Yes, well, thanks for having us. I'm Gary Ross, the manager of engineering for PhD PCNS. Appreciate you guys having us up and reviewing this and for your department. Taking the time to do this with my team.
Yeah.
So, but with that being said, just give you a little history background why we're doing this project. And we did install the new chain defense part of the unit replacement project in 2021. So a lot's happened since 2021. You know, in 2022, we saw an increase in tax on infrastructure across the United States. With that, those attacks, they were pretty substantial, put communities at risk. A lot of them without power. Most of the ones in North Carolina, about 47,000 residents without power. Yeah, so the attack down there, they shot up a transformer and the facility out of service for quite some time. During that time, and we saw substantial supply chain issues with, certain types of equipment. We still continue to see those types of supply chain issues, especially with a lot of things that are going on and I could have received. And to add a little more color to that, our chief security officer, but the BAE pipeline group that Dawn touched on a little bit earlier today. The three pipeline groups, Northern Natural Gas, which is in the Midwest, Turn River, which is out west, Utah, feeding down in California. And then the GT&S footprint, which is the Eastern Gas Transmission. You know, that Eastern Gas Transmission that operates according to the station, and we have a footprint that covers the state of New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, Maryland, and Virginia. We then have Carolina Gas Transmission, we touched on earlier, down in South Carolina. So our chief security officer approached us and his business unit about protecting these facilities, especially the critical facilities. So within Eastern Gas Transmission, there were 13 facilities that were identified. Georgia Compressor Station being one of those facilities. Up to this point, we have upgraded vents at 11 out of the 13 facilities this time. We have Georgia and another facility in Virginia yet to be upgraded. With the border though, with the ornamental, the Palisade fence, right, that's you know, facility, it's 13 that will receive that ornamental Palisade type fence. You have the comparison photo
I can pull those up.
Show council what we've done with the other 11 versus, the feedback from the main candidate here, right, is, could we do something different if it's in the, and so when his team went through all the manufacturers to do this and it found that the one that just saw the specs for this is what's gone on. They installed at the 11 other facilities. See that it's outside, double layered. Fencing going around the perimeter.
Yeah.
You can see the wire on the top. And the next photo, you'll see the gate, the entrance to that. This is another thing, by the way.
It looks more like a prison.
This is the gate entrance, very, very robust. So you can see, you can visualize what is out at Georgia right now that we just put in a couple years ago. The project, the events.
Yeah.
Now we're updating critical infrastructure across the BH footprint nationwide. And that's the entrance to it. So that is actually over the storage facility in Belmont.
So what's so in need of protection there?
It is a critical facility
Uh-huh.
for energy. And I know I talked about this last night when I was here for the presentation. We had in one of our Pennsylvania facilities in explosive device attached to one of our American regulations. And explosive device.
Yeah.
at one of our facilities.
Yeah, maliciously placed on. Yeah, okay.
So this is a directive from DHE, so when DHE saw that involve our companies. The directive within DHE. We're not going to say what could get done, we're saying what can we do to protect somebody taking ill will measures at one of our facilities. It's probably.
So this didn't come from Department of Homeland Security or FERC or anything like this?
Yes, so a little background on that, FERC has discussed with the operators. About and regulations coming out to enhance security around such facilities. At this time, they have just put it on the operators, realizing that this is significant investment, financial burden on the operators too. Yeah, this been project here alone, we estimated to be about $4.9 million.
This one site, this fence improvement, you're leaving what's there, but you're putting another layer on.
Remove the chain.
Oh, you are removing, okay, so.
Go back to the
Yeah.
fact sheet. So is that
Jason, that was up on yours.
that cut sheet for showing
Yeah.
the house? That's to compare what you saw with the white. Fencing and other, so. You can see.
Well, the gardening one is the planting around it, but it's.
Yeah, I don't see it then.
I think it'll be in that package, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know, it's just.
It's very easy to correct there.
So that's what you're going to put in, you're gonna remove the other one.
So this will have 8-foot panels, the 8-foot panels installed and have the tails on top that extend over and then the foot. We're using triangular type tail. It will have a mesh, steel mesh backing on it for cut resistance and anti-climbing. Prevent intrusion in that manner. And that's a little bit of the background on the blue layers, the two layers, our security team. They're really synced up with Homeland Security as well. So we've got a 10-minute cut time and intrusion time that we're trying to comply with. That comes out of an engineering standard. That we follow to make up our specifications for this facility. But the Palisade, you know, as we mentioned here, we're looking at, in comparison, we were to install the other fencing that we have been installing that we saw a photo of. That's about $500,000 difference. So to do the Palisade, we're spending an additional $500,000 for the, for the appearance within the community. And we realize that we don't want to put prison back.
That's a residential area.
Yeah,
So for that, thanks to the planning department for working with us to sign something to meet the community and going fast with the community. Facility.
And you're going with black or the dark green or?
Moss green, I thought was the,
Good,
Yeah. moss green
Good,
there.
okay,
And
yeah.
that's- we'd Probably like to stay with the moss green.
I like the sound of that more than black. It looks better.
Some of the other trim on building, they're green as well.
So that $500,000 extra, again, we're gonna do landscaping on top of that, so. Sheets on the application. Yeah. Right, so, good project for us, to check the facility, and it turns out it's a good project for the community, which we, reside over there. People not feel like we have some time. Checking. The critical infrastructure and pleasing way we.
There haven't been any security or risk incidences on this particular site, have there? Okay. There's a question behind.
It's probably more likely that you be attacked, forgery, through IT. That, in other words, hacking. And so I don't know what the computer situation is there, how safe is it? We, cybersecurity is very, and we are inundated with cybersecurity tests that we have as employees. And we're very strict about the company's cybersecurity issues and tests. And
I don't think any employee knows the consequences of that. Outside, but it's real, you know, we all know what happened along the pipeline, disrupting, vehicle gasoline supplies and origins. That was devastating, to that financially, and to disrupt, you know, commerce all across Eastern Seaboard for that. So, cybersecurity is very important, and it's all handled, through central servers that are now. But, I think that, somebody out there. Access. And the way our system is controlled from our gas control team, you don't have to be an internal source. Get access into that system. They control it, interesting, so they off the grid. We have fishing, spear fishing tests.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's all per week, but we've actually started the cybersecurity portion of the mission here prior to start that.
So Ray, we don't need to do a seeker on this.
Correct, it's a type 2. But in the resolution, I need to correct the date. I put in the wrong date on the whereas E, it should be today's date.
So, is there any more, are there any more questions from the board? Spring, did you have any questions? Are you?
Height wise, it'll be about the same height as the currently there.
So will this increase your assessment by $5 million?
Probably.
Hopkins County, if you're listening.
Yeah. Jay's already got, he's got it on notifications.
Fine with me.
No, no. All right, so I'll move the resolution
Second.
with the correction for the date and whereas E.
We're ready.
I do.
I sure did.
Councilperson Martin Monday.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
Spring into action.
Queen.
Hit it perfectly.
All right, cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
When does this work start?
Haven't ordered material yet, we were waiting for the approval.
Right.
So we anticipate probably June, July.
Yeah. So you put, I imagine you have to put up the new one before you can take down the old one. Is
We
that,
have a process, to make sure we.
yeah,
Secure the site overnight. We'll be secure. So we haven't ordered material yet, we had this discussion. The photo you saw of over, that's right outside now. And that was very, you know, live.
Yeah.
They will. Put out fairly. At the side. So you get the non-concurrent, whites inside. Actually, so we're looking to start June, July time frame.
what do you do with the old fencing? Just out of curiosity. The metal recycling. Well, maybe some of our broadband assets.
Yeah. Times interested in it, or about it.
Black fence.
We have some broadband installations, some terminals, some cabinets that probably should be fenced in, so. We might run that by our
Yeah.
engineers about whether we could use a little of it. It would be reusable, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a
Probably a good
broadband meeting
idea.
tomorrow and we can bring that up, so.
Yep.
Cool, thanks.
Go safe trip back. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I'm gonna close the public hearing on the South Hill Recway easement. Oops. And I'll move the resolution to accept it.
Second,
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Yes. And then I'll just need does that need permission from the board to sign off on the MOU with Caroline Danby and Town of Ithaca or the intermunicipal agreement for its maintenance and work on the trail.
you
Yeah,
signed
there's a
that.
resolution to,
It's in the,
Yeah.
it's part of the. No, it wasn't.
should be part of that package.
Yeah, I didn't.
Use a Sharpie.
Sign it in blood, how about that? Let's make it, it's more permanent, right?
I don't know if that's more permanent than a Sharpie. Really important people use a Sharpie.
I'm sharp. Yeah, there we go. This is it. Yeah, I see,
You're
it's
not
the
sharing.
authorization to sign these. and
Your
to sign- and to
screen
sign
is
the
to share.
agreement. Okay, so it's actually in the same thing. Yeah,
Yeah, that.
yeah, you wrapped it into the same actual resolution.
Yep.
So we're already done. I thought there were two different ones.
Do you have any time line expectations on this from your discussions with Bill or Mark, when this might open?
As
up?
far as the easement process,
Well, for it to open up.
Yeah, when this leg is opened up.
well, there's a lot of social use already. As soon as the easements are signed by the 4 towns, that has to go to the PSC to get final approval. So that's when we would have the right to entry. And that's probably June or beyond. I guess the next PSC meeting.
All right.
All right, the next resolution that's up is. Just Christina had put this together, so. It's a resolution to support New York State budget proposals and legislation to address climate change.
So I'm looking through this isn't in reference to budget negotiations. This is freestanding legislation, or do you know? She's not here.
I think these are just a bunch of different pieces.
Individual bills, right?
Yeah,
A lot of times these get debated for the budget. Of course, we would be a little late for that, but
so. I think the county has something like this. That's where it originated.
If I can mention, Dan, you're right, they're mostly under the separate bills, although some, I'm not sure right now where some of them stand. Some do get wrapped into budget negotiations. But I think a good number of them are gonna end up being discussed after the budget's done.
Superfund Act was part of the budget negotiations.
Right.
Well, it can't hurt to pass this.
So I'll move it.
Second,
Councilperson Murphy?
yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, and. Next up is a resolution to amend the Cortland Road Sewer District sewer rate for 2024. Move this.
Second.
Councilperson Murphy?
Yes.
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 Yes. And the resolution proclaiming May 2024 Building Safety Month. The rest of them are unsafe months.
Every month's building safety month for me. I don't know.
It shouldn't be limited to just a month. It should be every day.
Where did this come from?
Who moved it? Oh, I'll second.
So this is a national effort, so the Southern
Right,
Tier Building
right.
Officials Association made this.
This month.
Yep. So they made this resolution. I just templated off of theirs to generate one for the town of Dryden.
Okay. Who asked for this? Oh, it's sponsored by International Code Council?
Yep.
Non-public about critical need for our communities, largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials. Okay, all right, so we're giving.
Anything we can do to bolster the cause here. That's a good thing.
It's a thankless job. But we're thinking.
Right,
Yes.
for the month of May.
It's just not even starting today,
Isn't that what it's?
so we can start getting ready to think then.
Right,
Councilperson Lawrence Mendez?
Yes, please.
Yes,
yes.
Yes.
Next up is we have to amending the town of Dryden procurement policy. This is for the CDBG grants. We need to make some minor changes to comply. Their MWB participation, Davis Bacon, et cetera. And so one about integrating requirements of housing and urban development regulations. I'll move this.
second,
Yes.
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 Yes. And now we're gonna do a resolution to update the grievance procedure. This is also because of the grants.
Yeah, but this is an ADA procedure. Our policy was dating from, I think, 1984, so needed to update it. Yes.
What's the relation to that person? I'm sorry.
So the person that it named is not naming a position.
Oh, okay.
I'm just wondering.
Right. So I'll move this.
Change that. Second.
Councilperson Lawrence Mendez?
Yes.
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 Yes. And then next up is a resolution appointing our our code enforcement officers as zoning officers. Because Dylan, we had previously appointed, but he's leaving. So I'll move this.
Second, oh, third.
Also, from Brian from the-
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes, right. And then resolution to recognize Professional Municipal Clerks Week, which is May 5th through 11th.
I don't usually ask you to do that, but
Why are we?
Why wouldn't we?
Bryce started it.
We should do it all year, just like housing.
I'll move it.
Thank you.
A second.
I think that's the first one though.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right,
Just worried that it conflicts with National Nurses Week. That's May 6th through the 12th. How come
You
we
already-
don't? How come ours is just 6th to the 11th for clerks, but nurses? Do we need to look at that again? I think we might have given them 6 days.
Your template came from the international.
Day off.
I'm just going.
5th through the 11th for clerks, it's the 6th through the 12th for nurses.
so everybody gets their own day.
Let's just make sure we recognize that.
You got one too?
I don't have one ready,
No.
but thank you, nurses.
It's no National Lawyers Week though.
There's a reason.
I think that's like April 1st. isn't it?
No, it's April 31st.
It doesn't happen.
And that's why there will be no,
I get it.
now you get it.
Good one.
Mhm.
I got it right away.
All right, so we'll go to the advisory board updates. We'll start with Leo.
And that's good because I have a long statement to read.
Steve,
Yeah,
So yes, that would mean.
well, I mean, that's kind of organized finally.
This is going instead of giving my update for the April meeting, but you will get the minutes. You know, sent to you.
oh, wow.
Give me your statement.
Huh?
You'll give me your statement.
I'll send you a statement, you can have this one too. This is a statement from the Affordable and Workhouse. Affordable and Workforce Housing Committee. The Affordable and Workforce Housing Committee is concerned about the BRYC's last RFP draft, a stated goal for the land behind town hall to be for approval in their next meeting next Wednesday. The stated purpose of the town board was, when they agreed to create the RYC to be the leading agency for development of the town fields behind the town hall, was to develop an RFP for the comprehensive evaluation of the town land to include all optional and optimal uses, including housing. However, the RYC latest draft downgrades housing to a secondary goal, even behind a solar farm as possible use. As you look at the land area, the hilly parts of the eastern side of the town line don't lend themselves to be playing fields, not easily, not cheaply, but they might be likely site for housing development due to access and elevation. Consider the assets that surround these town lands, walkable to businesses, healthcare, grocery, restaurants, schools, a college, a growing walkable village, a growth plan, a comprehensive plan encouraged, but most importantly, the property has access to available water and sewer, critical for higher density housing, affordable housing for senior workforce, young families and youth is one of the most heralded and played demands in our town and county. This type of use will also put land back to the taxpayer. The youth and families in need of recreation fields, we agree that there is no risk of ball goals cannot be pursued appropriately. Further, the draft RFP
included significantly more investment in recreation, in land, in capital expenses, and in annual operating costs by asking consultants to somehow fit an indoor facility that can be used for summer camp and indoor recreational activity for both adult and youth residents, a playground, and even a concession stand. These uses go far beyond the board's commitment to build a couple of ball fields and will obviously crowd out any possibility of including much needed housing for our community. In addition, including in the multi-uses of that land is trail access to Village of Dryden and TC3 dorms, as well as some type of historical marker referencing the Dryden agricultural fairgrounds, as revealed by our town historian Lorenzo Spalding. We can't forget the contingencies that came with the land gift from Cornelius, namely a 60 feet right of way through town laws to access the Cornelius property to the north. And the town is required to build a road on the right of way to access the Cornelius property. Finally, on behalf of the Affordable Housing Committee, I asked the RYC to be included in the search process. Unfortunately, I received no response. It should be obvious that it is important to stay anywhere, to stay anywhere. The directions that are given to any potential consultant through an RFP will absolutely determine the choices that the town board will eventually be presented with. The Housing Committee feels strongly that the available land can accommodate reasonable recreational facilities as well as housing. The two uses should both be identified as goals by the town board.
Okay, so that was passed by the housing committee
Yes.
and in response to a draft RFP. or-
There's a
what's the
draft of an RFP that the DRYC has been working with the planning department on.
It's a draft
developing.
RFP that, by the way, is to be put for approval next week.
At the DRYC meeting.
Right,
Right.
and I know you've been part of the distribution group for this, and you're able to go to the meetings as well. So there has been,
You're talking
yeah,
about-
I'm talking to Leo, there's been opportunity to contribute to it, and it doesn't exclude housing. And the planning department's been involved from the beginning. In developing the RFP, and those are facts.
Well, it doesn't include housing, just put housing in the secondary category.
There's a list of,
Marginalized housing.
the primary use of the property was always gonna be first look at recreation, then we receive this wetlands delineation, which is really gonna define what we can do there no matter what. And-
Absolutely.
Right, and so, and all of these other things that are listed are things that not only, you know, DRYC, the town board has looked at one and thought about for years, but also Conservation Board, Climate Smart Community, Affordable Housing Committee, Planning Board. I mean, these are all, this is it's asking for a comprehensive
Well, as it
review of it. I mean,
is-
I think you're taking the order on the list to mean that that's the order of priority, which is not the case.
No,
So,
no,
and
it's
that's
the
a
way
draft.
that is the way that it's being worded. The wording of the entire RFP, you know, and stated down, you know, after the list of things that they put together, is clearly stated that housing is not a.
The primary, reason for,
I really would
What
like,
is that?
that's why,
Leslie, yeah,
thank you.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna walk up.
Yep.
I just want to speak forward here because honestly, it's kind of like, also a little bit hurtful. Because we did some draft in March and I heard nothing. So at hearing nothing, we can only talk to the next commission meeting about other things to put on there and what our ideas were. We then recirculated it for the comments, and that's when, for the Spanish 3 days, this past weekend, we received comments saying, we didn't do this, we didn't do this. I responded right away. I said, please let me know when that you like. It was unintentional omission.
The order on there is not the order that we're necessarily going to go with. They did just go back with vice chair. Like, I have for this board meeting with other suggestions to make it more precise
Right.
as to orders of what we're doing. Okay? I'm a little frustrated because I did ask for comments early on. The comments in the paper must not true. I know that you did reach out to us in here, and I think, I don't know which one of them you asked to have this, I apologize for that. In that process, Dave and I were discussing who's going to be chair and what can get really circled back. So I do recognize that is true. But we did respond when you said you wanted more things, and I hadn't seen any.
It's not that we wanted more.
We want.
The purpose was from the very beginning to have a comprehensive view of the uses of that land.
Yes, which housing is a secondary thing, and just like it's been said, and recreation.
It was not a secondary thing when we discussed it here.
It was we can review these minutes. In all these past meetings, and the primary use of that property is scheduled to be, is supposed to be recreation and housing, we
The
would look
minute
at.
they did not establish primary and secondary uses, it's just established.
I mean, I'm talking about-
Potential uses for that particular site.
Okay, but on top of that, just to like really advocate for the recreation commission then. We don't want to go into the thing and come back with 2 fields and other uses because we need more than that. We need to expand our soccer program. We don't have the space for it right now. It's part of us to run our programs and we have to depend on the schedules of the high school and elementary school to do practices. It makes Marty's job harder, and the idea of this is to try to help our recreation department be more efficient and grow. And yeah, I mean, if there's, like, we should explore out the other, it's a lot of land. We also have the conservation board, you know, we brought up concerns too, so I have reached out to them to figure that out, and most likely will not do something next Wednesday, but when we haven't heard anything back, how are we supposed to know that it wasn't that?
My first response was early April. And I just got your RFP, the first RFP, at that time. And my response was immediate. If I did
I
not,
sent it on March 23rd, you were on.
in March 23rd, I wasn't. So I was out of the country. But as soon as I came back,
Right, but you were on the initial email chain, so you can't say you weren't looped in from the beginning.
Change, that's fine. I'm just frustrated because this is turning into a major emotional reaction of.
Right.
Some of these accusations, and that was not our intention, it was about intentional omission. So I feel like I have to come here and defend my fellow commission members who are parents who are just really excited for the idea of doing like these programs that they're in. And, we're gonna continue the conversation. We need to wait another month or two to explore more of a plan, just being there, fine. I mean,
I want to make clear that we are not against the development of the field.
yeah. I learned how to get some help out of housing. I helped myself live out of red. So I mean, I did, but.
Right.
We are just stating that the two lines of development can be looked at. In the same way and in the same, the same level. That is nothing in our, in our agreement when we put together this, that says that the fields, the primary use of those fields was related to recreation. It just says
When we
it's
accept it.
going to be looked at in a comprehensive way. That's all, with all the potential uses available. And that is the stated, the resolution that we passed there.
Right, and when we accepted the property, the intention was first recreation and then everything else. And that's why we didn't, there were no stipulations put on it by the donor. But their intent was recreation first.
But
Leo, you can't
it wasn't
deny that.
intended, it was not, it was not.
Right now, I feel like there's weasel words being used about this entire thing.
No, it's not, it's about simply saying, look, we have nothing against developing, we know that is a need. It's a need that is not being attended for years. Okay, so we are in support of that development of that. And in fact, we would love to work with you, and the committee in
pursuing that effort, but at the same time, we want them to hear that housing is a possibility as a, a potential use of that land. Not all the land, nor the lands that can be developed reasonable, for fields. Okay.
My frustration with why I'm here right now is because we wrote a letter to be presented at the town board. We escalated it to a point that I really don't feel like was fair to me and the commission to do. And so now, here I am, 8 o'clock at night, coming here in person, away from my young child, because I felt like I need to come here and defend the commission, because I didn't get an opportunity to write a letter each time we come board meeting, and neither did you. I saw it when I was done, and I got out of work at 5 o'clock. That doesn't feel fair. So I just feel because I really don't feel like that is fair. I understand your concerns, and we're working on it. And we'll continue to discuss that. We have to wait longer to revisit if we want to do this. It's fine.
Yeah, because then town board's got to approve it anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not,
Yeah, that's absolutely.
so, and remember with, we're talking about turning 2 dorms. I mean, it's already talked, which happened last week. Of two, what, maybe 3 dorms, TC3 turning into housing. And then the Ezra Village apartments are being built. I mean, people will have a need for more we'll have more of a need for more recreation facilities in this town. Especially on this side of town with all of these new residents.
In the easternmost.
Well, this is where all the housing is being developed here. I mean, it's like,
It's in
it
various
is,
places.
but there's various places we have to do it too, but it's just like right now, we have over here, there's Montgomery Park.
We're not questioning that. We are
Okay.
questioning simply, the narrow way of looking at it.
I'm not looking at
The
this now.
development of
I
that
have
particular
more
site.
experience about looking at this town's. The only person who's even in this meeting, sitting in this meeting now, has been around doing this more is Bambi and maybe Martha.
With what?
Just looking at all the town issues about it. And recreation's been the
I've
one.
been
that-
representing Dryden back to the
Right.
90s.
The
He was
90s.
still in diapers when I started
Yeah.
working in. But
But
thank
part
you
of-
for coming.
Yeah.
And this is really important because we can balance these things. The town has limited land. We have this parcel. We know for years we're underbuilt on athletic fields. It was my hope when we started looking at this that we could accommodate the athletic needs of this community with this project. And in addition, with what's left, get into some housing needs. But we need so much housing and we're not going to solve our housing issue. We have the potential though to really address the recreation needs with this project. And like a typical town would have that as a public good. It's unusual for towns to get into housing. The housing crisis makes us want to try. And so that's why we're trying to balance both these. But I would encourage the RYC to keep moving on this and to know that it's a priority to develop these athletic fields but to the extent that we can set aside some for housing. But we don't know where the housing,
We don't know where it would go, it's.
where the money would come from, how
But
that would even,
the way that you define the goals
yeah.
and the governor direct, inform the study done by the consultant, whoever the consultant is, right?
Well,
So if we use the language in which we prioritize one thing over the other, and if, things go well, we can go and see housing, then that's the language of my colleague. Okay, so I disagree, and we
okay.
Commission focuses on education, never change that language, because that's what it's supposed to be. And if you have other questions about language, or suggestion of how you want language, I did ask them to do it in time, they do, I was like, never do it.
I haven't read yet, David Peck's latest note.
Because you haven't had a week since you made your comments, and then here we are sitting there commenting, arguing about it, and I'm just going through the building, and I'm asking. It's very frustrating for me as well, like, because I'm at the time, and have that immediate reaction, that my first go at, field this.
I was, my own, frustration was also sort of expensive things.
Say that because housing is very much building. I work in housing, there's never had one. There'll never be. It's very frustrating. Like, so I do get that and there's need to advocate for that. I don't know it. But I also really feel like there's not gonna be many opportunities that recreation will ever get.
Right.
To develop. Like, I don't really feel like we're ever gonna get the opportunity again, and that's kind of why we went and snowballed into what we had, because I'm not sure if we'll have the opportunity to do that again.
The private sector doesn't make ball fields.
No, they don't.
And there's no nonprofit group that's looking to build us ball fields. We have to do it on public lands that we have.
Yeah, I see you, Martha, just hang on.
And so, you know, that. And we can move on a recreation development a lot quicker than a housing project where. You guys are gonna have to convince us where the funding's gonna come. Who's gonna structure this housing project? And could it sit there for years waiting to happen?
Right.
That's not our intention with this property. We have an immediate need for recreation space. And if there's buildable area there, then we should build it and we can look long-term, but I just have a feeling that it's gonna take years to put together a housing project, whereas the recreation could start as soon as this resolution gets passed and we can get in there and we can build temporary fields. We could, you know, start using this space almost immediately.
All right, Martha.
Hold on. Thank you very much. And I would wait for citizen privilege, but I hope Leslie would stick around. I want to speak while Leslie's here and she's been waiting a long enough time anyway. Please understand, I think the housing committee is not, we fully expected to see a plan that involved like probably 2 ball fields and the parking that would go with it and bathrooms, that makes sense too. I think when we saw the list that included solar, that included a whole new building for recreation, a concession stand, a playground, it was sort of like the kitchen sink. And first I should say, it's extremely hard on Zoom to hear anybody aside from town board members. We can't hear Leslie, can barely hear Leslie. I'm sure I don't know what she said. But I have an idea. Let me just say, I think we certainly understand the need for the fields. We feel that a couple of fields sounds great, and Brad will even put together a sketch that looked at the wetland delineation, and it looked like, okay, you get a baseball field here and a big soccer field there, and the land, as Leonardo said, the land on the slope, you know, would not make sense for a field, but that'd be a great place for some townhouses. We thought it'd be a great, and I think the idea of a boardwalk and a path so that all of this is walkable and accessible, that makes sense. I think what put us over the edge was a whole new building for recreation, which is, and playground and concession stand. Those are investments way beyond what's been discussed for years as ball fields. And, at that point, you're talking about millions of dollars. You're talking about maintaining a building, operating a building. At that point, that level of investment, is it really fair to Dryden taxpayers to put that on the farthest east side of the town, that kind of investment? We don't have any ball fields on the west side of town. We don't have anything. We have the trail. That's great. We have the Fall Creek Park. That's passive space. That's fine. You mow the grass. We don't have any kind of investment like that anywhere east of the village, anywhere west of the village. So once you start talking about the wish list that was in that draft RFP, that's what set off alarm bells. Now, I think I've been representing the town for more than 20 years, going back more than 20 years. Housing has been an absolute crisis for even longer than that. Every place that you can put housing is going to help. And when you've got a village, the village is a perfect node. That's where you want the densest possible housing you can get. You've got water and sewer right there. it's accessible, it could be perfect housing, it could be a revenue generator for the town. Yes, it would take a little longer. You'd put together an RFP, say, oh, you know, you'd invite developers in and say, you know, what could you build here? It could be a perfect match with a couple of ball fields. And bring in revenue for the village, bring in tax revenue for the village and revenue for the town, whether you sell the land to a housing developer or lease it. There are many options. The point here is the direction to a consultant will absolutely shape what they're going to show you, what they're going to give you back. If you say we want all of these things for recreation, there's no land left for housing. There's just not. And really, if you're planning to build a whole new recreation building, I think you really need to kind of take that to the public and the taxpayers, and that's a whole nother smoke. So what we would, I think on the housing committee, we're gonna, you know, Leonardo called a special meeting for Monday, so we can look at this more carefully. Leslie, nobody's trying to, you know, downplay the work and the commitment of the DRYC. I think the issue is here, let's work together. There, you know, we have a lot of respect for those needs and for the commitment, but we'd really like to work together on this to make it, we could make it a beautiful plan that would serve a lot of different needs for the community. So I just think ball fields are great, parking, bathrooms, the rest of the stuff seems really excessive, and I would say solar shouldn't even be anywhere on that list. It makes no sense to take valuable land in the middle of your village, the middle of a walkable residential area, and put solar panels on it. It just doesn't make sense at all. So those are, I really appreciate your letting me speak now before the citizen privilege. I just really wanted to kind of make it clear, we're not against the ball fields. I think it's the other massive investments that was really a surprise. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, Spring. Oh, you're muted, Spring.
Was gonna say, with my voice the way it is, I'm not sure it matters that much. One is, I wanted to say two things. One is, my understanding is this really is an RFP was intended to be a feasibility of what's even, if anything's even possible, being that so much of the property is wetlands and the way the wetlands shape in the land. The other thing I just wanted to share is, after reading Leonardo's letter earlier, I did go back and I read through, I keep going back to the Dryden 2045 planning document, because I really believe that's a good touchstone, and that the balance of preserving our outdoor spaces along with meeting the needs of housing are so integrated for healthy well-being for our community. So I really don't think these things are at odds. But we did ask this committee to work on putting this RFP together, and they've been doing that. So I just we put a lot on them on that, and I want to also say that I appreciate them putting the effort in to try and develop this, because they really, I think my understanding is we really were tasking them to look at improving outdoor space use, but wanting to understand what our options would be around housing while we were at it, if that makes any sense.
Thanks. I would just say, why wouldn't we want to word? I guess I would like to see the RFP worded in a way that said, you know, to the consultant, the town would like space for, let's say, 60 units of housing. Just picking a number, but you know, just in space for 2 soccer fields and a softball field, you know, if that's what we want. Why not try and contour, in the best case scenario, we would like to find room for this much what is possible. And the consultant could come back and say, given where the wetlands are, given where the topography is, you know, you could best fit in 50 units of housing and, you know, 2 soccer fields and a pickleball court, you know. I think that's what we asked the consultant to do, and what would a proposed plan look like, and what would the relative costs be? If there's space for, you know, we're going to need restrooms. I think that's a given. How can we run a recreation program without restrooms and parking? And that's been a persistent need for you know, as long as I've been involved in Dryden, and you know, somebody who uses the local fields for recreation. So we know of that, and yeah, I would just, you know, ask the consultant to help us, you know, sort out what's possible with this property.
Yeah, and so this
That's-
is still a draft, still, and we
Right.
can drive home, it's a draft, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not what was what people are looking for, then yeah, go back to the drawing board, and that's where my frustration was too, because it's just like, yeah, I gave it that drawing, because no one. I didn't decide right now. I don't mind being more specific like that, I always worry getting specific in our RFP like that, because then it has to be a whole into that, right? And we did write a line in there saying, we understand, given the situation with the wetlands, these are not all the things, not all the things are possible. I did try to put a sentence in there, so whoever's reading it isn't thinking, you guys are crazy, because I do know, like, there's a good chance that that's really can't happen.
Yeah.
You know?
So, I mean, is that an approach that your committee could be comfortable with? Then we, you know, we would like to see, how many units are you looking for?
We don't know.
Well,
So the comprehensive, the comprehensive, you know, plan for that. Because somebody will look at it, say, look, these are the options, okay? The options are the fields, whatever fields, these are, you know, and it also can accommodate this, you know, this type of number of units or so forth. I don't know, I'm not, you know, I can't look at it and say, look, there is number of.
well, I
That's
think,
where we are, right? That's why we.
I'm not an expert, right?
Right.
And the way he wrote back before this meeting actually said, he did outline it
Right.
in different categories. And he's like, let's do this, this, and this, and then we put
Right.
subcategories underneath. And the way that he has it organized, I think, is a very workable thing. And yeah, if you just read what he said, because he does want to know what do you want to put under housing as almost like vertical, and we're gonna go from there.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'm here for this because I feel like it was a draft. It was a draft, we could have.
we
discussed
understood
this at
it.
The next ERYC commission meeting, we could have discussed it over at UL, like, you know, I feel a little attacked, but I'm like, okay, I'm trying here.
Well, I understood it was a draft, but it was a draft that was going to put for further discussion and approval, right? In the
I
next,
was
in your
gonna take
next
that,
meeting.
Give it. if this
So
was-
that's why my response. Now, on Monday, we have a special meeting. And we will work with what we have here as a conversation. And we'll be more specific and detailed about, well, are the possible things that we can see there. Okay,
And I know for the date, but again, I would have asked, like, I would have responded to an email saying, can we delay the finalization? of this? I would have delayed it for another month, it still will. But my God, I'm mad. It's not.
well, you might be able to,
Right, like, we'll just push it.
if your committee can come up with what you're looking for and with some metrics, then you can work that into the RFP that, you know, we've delayed long enough.
Yeah.
You know, let's not wait another, this is,
we don't have to go, but we do need to have a, you know, sort of more, you know, back and forth conversation about.
Yes, and most likely way more conversations when the consultant is hired, when they're doing the plans.
Well, there's-
See the first one, go, that's not.
They're gonna likely hold a meeting with
You weren't
the
allowed-
ROIC, whatever, yeah, so it's not. They're not gonna just look at the RFP, we're not gonna just pick somebody and they're gonna go off the paper and then do it, they're gonna come and talk to us like again also. So that's how it works.
broad in the RFP, and then we get more focused as the consultant comes in. That's how we've worked with every consultant here, you know, you get a number of people who are interested, if you're too specific, then you'll eliminate a lot of
Well, so that's
consultants.
here,
you know.
on
Yeah.
our different balance.
You can't-
Specific, but not specific.
Yeah.
Say
Right.
that. You know.
You, Martha?
Yeah, I mean, the way it's written, I mean, the way it's written also will determine what kind of consultants will even apply. The current draft, somebody who's interested in housing, an expert in housing, probably wouldn't even bother. If you're reading what the draft says now, that's going to be aimed at people whose expertise is ball fields and recreation. And so, I mean, the idea of comprehensive means you want firms that will be able to do both. So, I mean, I think I'm really glad that Leonardo was able to pull together the housing committee on short notice. I mean, I think we can take that draft and we can work on it and sort of provide a revision. I hope solar, for example, will just come off the list altogether. And, Dan, I think your suggestion of, say 60 units of housing and 2 or 3 fields, and they'll come back and tell us. And I think that might be all we really need. And I kind of like that idea.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks for your
Cool.
patience.
Thanks, Leslie. Yeah.
And,
Thanks.
we need volunteers like you, so,
Yeah.
peaks
Okay.
and valleys and.
Yep. All right, let's move down the list. Spring, is there anything conservation? Or,
I don't have any updates. So no.
right, and then, well,
She's not here, so
Christina's
planning, I think we
here.
know mostly what we did planning. We met with NYSERDA, we talked about the fire departments getting involved, which has happened. We know about our new vacancy in the planning department. We need to be thinking about that and getting Ray some help as soon as possible. Anything I'm missing?
Nope, that was the major items.
Do we have an idea on ETA where the zoning is done?
We had a good meeting with our zoning consultant last week, Nan. And she took a lot of feedback from the planning board and me and Ray. And we gave her a list of people to speak to, including you, Jason. I'm sure you'll be speaking with her and a few others.
Yep.
I think she's gonna do great. I really do. I like her style. She's interact and interested in the work that we're doing, so.
good.
The work she's doing, or the work the zoning board's doing, will that have any impact on our previous discussion?
No.
Okay.
That's not, this is more like looking at our current zoning law.
Yep.
And if you haven't already, take a look at it and looking at.
I didn't know if it might impact maps of land use type areas. That's why I was wondering if that would be impacted. Okay.
That's in the village anyway, right? But we're looking to simplify zoning, not make it more complicated. So, if you get any pushback from your interactions with the public, just remind them that we're not looking to make our zoning law more complicated. We're looking to make it less complicated to be more housing friendly. That's one of the top directives, I've been saying, and a few others on the board to Nan is, we want to make this place easier to build and more welcoming to, housing developers, because that's what we really need.
We want Grand Model like zoning.
Yeah. And the accessory dwelling units, trying to reduce single lot spaces, looking to develop the areas that do have sewer and water, or maybe just water, and looking at, and then making sure that those are geared towards development. So, and then she's gonna make some broad recommendations, and then we want her to, if we want to engage her further, we will, to do specific language changes that may be recommended by her.
Okay.
But really good start to that.
Yes. Craig, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, I was just gonna add, spring one, I think another one was just to reduce the number of special use permits that are required for businesses, try to make the town a little more business friendly, so. Thank you. Hey, thank you all for a great meeting.
Yep, thanks. Right, I mean, is rail. We're still waiting like on that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
we
Nick.
spent a lot of time complaining at our rail trail meeting about the delay in getting some easements, the paperwork done, so we can put the bridge project out to bid, but we've got two property owners that are very important towards the pedestrian bridge and
We got one of them done.
the Cornell.
Oh, no, on, yeah, we just
But that's,
got that signed. Yeah, this week.
but I think we've all been interacting with Nate about the need to expedite the Knickerbocker paperwork, and
Yeah.
it's just complicated. I'm not gonna get into all the details right now, but it's involving different local agencies and lawyers, and I think maybe a couple more weeks. Get that together and we can get that up to New York State and get it filed with the county, and we can put the project out to bid once those things are taken care of.
And then, I guess Ag, they canceled their meeting this month. Broadband, well, we have a meeting tomorrow. I wasn't at the last one. But if you might have noticed, if you're driving on your way to town hall, Syracuse Utilities actually installing, I guess if not the fiber itself, the conduit for the fiber right down here on Main Street. They were almost at Mike Lane's house when I
Wow.
Pat came through at like 2:30. And then the RYC, yeah, I'll be at the meeting next week. But yeah, Leslie, thanks for doing all that work. I mean, I know that it's been stressful last like seeing all this, but you're doing a great job. So. Well, yeah, because to me, like, recreation has really not been a priority for the board for a long time. And, it's something that we really need to focus more on too, as long as we're adding more and more housing, because people need to be able to have things to do where they live. I mean, like for myself, I bike over in, Ulysses and Ithaca because our trail isn't good for road bikes. Like it's not there yet. So I travel, I travel 10 miles to go ride my bike 16.
Yeah, but if municipalities don't provide it,
Right.
they will.
Right, and that's why we gotta we'll start, do both hand in hand. So. Anyway. All right,
I just want to remind people that the comprehensive plan we approved, right? Establish housing as one of our priorities next.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not we are not coming out of, out of the blue and from priorities that doesn't belong to this town. Okay, it's coming from our own comprehensive plan.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
That's why we're doing this zoning. One of the main goals of the zoning rewrite is to make it more friendly to developers and try and incentivize, more multifamily housing and starter homes. What is different is using town property for housing. That's not, we don't have a big history of doing that.
we didn't have town lands until we got this gifted land. It's probably the only town land we can speak about. So.
Right, but
Will definitely catch our interest to see that.
right,
land is
well, I
properly
think it's
developed.
incumbent on your committee to show us how that works.
Yeah.
Show us a town that's done that,
Well,
and show us the financial model that would work. Otherwise, we're just gonna have land that we're decided is gonna be used for housing that never gets developed, so that's my fear. So, show us how that's gonna work.
okay, well, I mean, I'm sitting, I guess citizens privilege. Is there anybody who hasn't said anything yet? Right,
Yeah, in response to Dan's comments there, the possibility is to sell the land to a developer, Dan, and take that money and put it into a rec fund and buy some land that's centrally located. This is not my idea. This was presented almost 12 years ago when the big Central Park was proposed. And the costs for that park were astronomical. There was a lot of pushback from the west side of town saying, you know, why should we support a park on the east side? Why don't you do a Central Park? And it sort of just, I believe, Mayor, it just sort of washed away. I think also the cost of developing the land because of the amount of water that's on that property. But, you know, so I think there's possibilities that you could look at. So I wouldn't just nix housing and say, you know, the town's going to develop housing. I don't think the intention is for the town to develop housing. I think the intention is to find a developer that might be interested in developing the type of housing that the town might need and selling the property to them to develop that. I mean, so does that make sense?
I'd be more comfortable with that.
Yeah, and I don't want to think that the town's going into the housing business, or that's the intention. The intention is to find a partner that might be able to do it. And the intention is not to take away from recreation. I know, I mean, I totally support recreation. I mean, Jason, you and I have talked about looking for other properties centrally located in the community. And that's reality, you know, that would make the most sense if you could fund it. You know, and you say, well, land's expensive right now, but it's only going to get more expensive. You can find a good chunk of land that would support the needs of recreation and be on the rail trail and be on Fall Creek. You know, what a great opportunity for the town. And even if you overpay for that property, you know, in 5 years, 10 years from now, nobody's going to care. You know, you're going to have a great recreational facility. You'll have that grand park that everybody that wanted Mary Ann's vision from 10 years ago would be there. So,
Well,
yeah,
I mean, all I remember is back in 2016, we wanted to buy land for a park and we ended up having an election on about it and the public didn't.
Yeah.
But time,
you know, that was 8 years ago. Times have changed. So.
program.
That was centrally
And that
located
park-
land and that was.
That was centrally, yeah, exactly. It's centrally located and everything else. And it was even.
But anyway, thanks for hearing me out, and you guys have a great night. Have a
Yeah.
great.
Thank you. Yeah, and the piece of land that was probably the best for it was the part that the piece at the bottom of Ringwood where the land trust bought it.
The Brotherton property.
Yeah, and it's protected now, so we can't do it.
Well, there's still the Leonardo property.
Which they'd have to want to sell it.
Right.
I mean, the thing is like when there's these bigger developments, if they're done with a PUD. Whoever is, whether it's the village or the town, you know, we need to really force the hand of. Getting funding for recreation facilities to balance it out. So the Ezra, I don't know how Ezra Village is being done, but. The village really should be getting a PUD. With some recreation component to it too, whether it's just money or. You know, they could buy land someplace to. set up.
One of the designs I saw had a ball field built into it.
Yeah, so, but there's that kind of thing that can be done with, so. Just Martha, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Yeah, just, I really appreciate this conversation and, if it were easy to solve the housing crisis, we would have done it already. I think this area in the village is a prime location. There's so many assets and there could be even more. And, you know, the TC3 dorms plus Ezra Village, plus the DOT site that's been in the process of being sold to Park Grove. I mean, there's just a lot of opportunity. And I think it like when you want to open a restaurant, you know, the place to open a restaurant is where there are other good restaurants. You know, I think if you put a piece of this land up on the market, I think you'll get some very interesting proposals. And you know, it's something where the community's future really depends on having a variety of kinds of housing options. And, you know, I think we can accommodate all these things and make the best use of the options that we have. So, you know, I personally look forward to working with you guys and with DRYC to come up with the best proposal. And, you know, I think we have, you know, the county developed a needs assessment back in, I think, 2014 and a housing strategy in 2016. And every year the county does an updated housing snapshot. And every year we fall farther behind in terms of the housing that we need. And, you know, it's really, it affects sustainability, it affects income inequality, social mobility, quality of life. And I think the ball fields are a great addition, a great part of this too, and we can put them all together. So thank you.
Thank you.